The Durham Town Council meeting of November 10th, 2025. Tonight's meeting will be about the budget, and that is the agenda for the meeting. And we'll go ahead and take a roll call while we're here.
Heather Grant.
Robin Vogt.
Todd Zellig. Joe Friedman.
Sally Needell.
Darrell Ford.
Curtis Racer.
Hardin Welsh.
All right. So in terms of how this will go, this is a discussion about the budget. Councilors are free to ask any questions or talk about any part of the budget that they like. I think what we'll do is we'll perhaps go in turn. When each person is done, then there can be discussion in between. If there is intended to be a public hearing next Monday on the 17th, so we're going to let the public weigh in as well. So if you're thinking about amendments to the budget, if each of you would write down what those amendments are and then perhaps have ready for the 17th what you would expect that amendment to read. But we will not introduce any amendments before the public has had a chance to weigh in so we're not going to be making a motion to approve the budget tonight. This is a discussion about the budget. Should be pretty free-flowing. The public is not weighing in tonight with any of this. They will give us their opinions next week. Just overall schedule. If things go well, on the 17th, after the public hearing, we will have further deliberations, and we may decide on that day, or we may decide December 1st. If we decide by December 1st, that means that that's 14 days for it to wait before it can be approved, which would be our last meeting of December. If it isn't approved by the 15th, I suppose we could hold special meetings, but if it's not done by the end of December, the default budget will be what the administrator has proposed.
And we may need to add a December 8th meeting, depending on what happens on December 1st.
Or how much feedback there is from the public on the 17th, yes.
So that would be the fallback December 8th.
That might be another meeting if we get to the 17th and see how it goes and how much input from the public there is and how much we've been talking internally about making changes to that budget. So I think with that, if anybody would like to, would you like to go first?
I'd be happy to start just right off the bat with an intention for an amendment to the budget because IMAC voted to withdraw the $5,000 that they requested. So that would be an amendment to the motion when we get there.
Yeah, Sally, could I say something?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't mean to hop in, but I thought one good thing would be before we discuss the budget, we should kind of discuss the parameters of where we are with this budget. So I have 7 points that I like to make. One, we've discussed the desire to make Durham more affordable to families, to the middle class, and to the workforce. And we have been making this much more difficult by increasing our town property taxes faster than inflation. Since 2022, under the proposed budget, total property taxes will increase 7.9% per annum. And over the same period, inflation's been increasing by 2.9% per annum. So we're consistently increasing our taxes more than the rate of inflation. And adding on to this problem, our town has not been growing at a rate consistent with our budget. So we're putting more of a tax burden on each of the property owners. Since the last assessment, which I think were the 2023 numbers in our documents, town valuation has increased less than 1% a year. Further, UNH is shrinking. UNH is already down over 1,000 students on its Durham campus. They expect this decline to continue until 2031. They're facing significant budget cuts and fewer offerings to students. And while the impact of this on Durham is uncertain, it's likely not good. So in the face of all this, the situation we have a 2026 budget that requests an even greater, more rapid increase in taxes. For 2026, the taxes to be raised are up 18.6%, while inflation is estimated to be 2.3%. So a big increase in taxes over inflation. And this increase further will impact some homeowners and businesses more than others. We just had this reassessment, and the average property went up 21%, but some properties went up as high as 65%. So those people, even if we have no increase in expenses or taxes this year, people will be hit pretty hard with this year's budget. This increase further is expected to continue in future years. If you looked, the increase would be 6% for next year and 12% the year after versus the inflation expectations of 2 to 3%. And further, we tend to bond a lot of projects, big projects, and lately we've had the Madbury Road project. And with these existing payments that we have to make, plus the new bonds, the bonding would go up from $2.2 million in 2027 to almost $3.7 million in 2028. So if we approve all of the capital that's been requested, we're going to have a huge problem in 2028. Luckily, some of us won't be on budget, so it's on the council, so it'll be someone else's problem. But further, and one thing to consider too, when you consider an addition to the workforce or to what we offer to the shareholders, it's rare for something to be added one year and then subtracted the next. So whenever we add something, it pretty much becomes a fixed cost, as Todd likes to refer to personnel as. It's not true in business, but apparently true here. So if we approve something, we're likely to be improving a long-term cost increase to the town, potentially forever and ever. So it's best to add programs and people in years when the town has grown so we can support that growth. We went through this period of time in the kind of the teens and early 20s when we added a lot of student housing, and with that we were able to add a lot of things like this new building, like the new police building, the library, better parks and rec. We did a lot of things that were, I think, appropriate because we had a growing tax base, but we don't have a growing tax base now. So I think it's very important for us to think very, very carefully about what we add. And I see we have a lot of our managers and people who are going to be impacted in the audience. I would like them to think of this as a managerial challenge. This is a tough year. We can't be adding new things. Think about how you take your resources and spread them more effectively, because I don't think it's really fair to ask the taxpayers to take an 18% increase in taxes. So that was it.
I also have some kind of general points or questions, and I share Councillor Welch's concerns that, I think the estimate was for every $500,000 of assessed value, we'd see about $535 increase in assessed. That's just the municipal portion. So I think two questions that are really important to understand right now are we looking at also an increase in the school taxes? And are we also looking at an increase in the county taxes, and about how much for both? And I do want to share that, I've spoken with a couple of folks around town, and it includes some very wealthy residents who own businesses and property and residences, and even they are like, this is a hike. It's gonna, oftentimes if you are an owner of a property that you lease out, currently a lot of people are moving to a model where you write in your lease terms, any property increases are going to fall on your tenant. And so that starts to affect the viability of downtown businesses. Not just downtown, but businesses in Durham, as well as it affects rental prices. And so that, I think that this is a real concern, and I also fear that Durham's population is in fact shrinking. And that may mean that we need to look at offering fewer services for a smaller population. I mean, if our year-round resident population is it 6,000? 9,000? 6,000.
6,500.
I mean, for a town of 6,000, 6,500, we offer extraordinary services when we compare ourselves to other towns, even in, of comparable wealth in the area of the seacoast. And I think we might need to look more carefully at that.
Anybody else like to make any opening comments or observations? Would anybody like to make any specific, have any specific questions or comments that they'd like to make about the budget?
Yeah, I'll speak up in terms of a proposed amendment I'm going to have coming on down the line here. Kind of speaking to the overall conversation that we're having about taxpayers and everybody taking a hit at this time, I think it's only fair that we as counselors also join in that. This is conversations that are not just happening in Durham. These are happening in municipalities across New Hampshire. So my proposed amendment has a reduction in the town council pay from $1,500 to $1,000. Just because if taxpayers in Durham are going to be taking a hit, I think it's only fair that we show that we are willing to take a hit, and it shows our commitment as well to this work. So.
I think I think it's a good idea. I think one of the things that's in part kept us from doing that in the past is what it'll take to change the charter or.
It's in the charter.
It's in the charter. But
Sure.
Well, it costs us
Very doable,
$1,000.
very doable.
Right. Yeah, and I think within that conversation too, I think if that's what it takes in order to send that message, then that's what it is. Especially for folks that are going to come back and say at the end of the day, like, hey, we're handling such a burden here. What is the council doing? What hit are they taking in this fact? So
Theoretically, they're taking a hit. Well, they're taking a hit every year that there's not been an increase, and I don't know when the last increase ever was.
It's never been.
And-
Never been one,
and- Right, and on top of that, it really, in order to actually, I think, attract more young people and some more diversity from retired only, it is a lot of work to do. And so I just
Right.
be a little careful about cutting it. I think you could even go the other way. It's probably not a good year to do that, but there's a lot of hours that all the counselors put in, both
Yeah.
here and on committees that, as you may know, also, there are some towns that pay as much as $10,000, but no one's talking about that
Yeah.
either.
right.
And I think in the past, Todd has also kind of floated the idea of at least offering compensation for dependent care. So if you had a child or a family member that you were responsible for and you needed to hire someone to be here, so I think that would be an interesting part of that conversation as well, because I very much agree with the sentiment of, we're not in this for any personal gains, but I am wary of the state house model of the, where these are essentially entirely volunteer positions. They pretty much are already, but the issue that creates in the state house is that we have a very distorted representation in the state house in terms of who can afford to be there, and that's already a tension at the local level, and I'd be concerned about making that harder.
Sure. I will push back on that briefly and say the fact that we have state representatives and folks in New Hampshire that are leaving the state house to take on municipal roles because of that cost difference, I think has something to say about it as well in conversations with former colleagues of myself. So I think where the conversation about having younger folks and having folks become part of the community and be part of this process, I think at the same time, when you're offering $100 per term to a state representative, and you look at the pay that we are getting on the council, I know for myself, moving to Durham as a former state representative, that was very appealing to me, to be in the town of Durham. So I think that there's two sides to that at the same time.
Councilor Richardson?
I just want to submit that all this discussion has probably not used our time most appropriately, so we can hear what the departments have to say and we can eat their time up. I do hope that we have as much of a defensive mindset when it comes to protecting their jobs as salary.
So I don't believe that any departments are making any presentations, but they are here to answer questions or issues that come up from this discussion.
Good to go.
So should we go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah, if I could talk to David.
I think there was a list that.
There is a list.
Oh,
We've got a
That's what I was
suggested
under. the impression
order
of.
where the department heads would come up one by one. So first we have Conservation
Where'd that
Commission,
come
if we have
Where it came
questions
from,
for,
I thought I had saw something.
for them. So,
She got a printout. She knows what's
Well,
up.
I printed out at home, came in an email.
It's in the
When?
council communication. Did people
When
have
did
it?
no, I saw something at some point.
I didn't see that, but
Uh,
I thought
November
that
4th.
each one was coming up and
It came on
reviewing their
November 4th.
budgets.
Yeah,
Looking
somehow
for it.
that's
November
what-
4th.
Isn't that what you said?
Good to go. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you, Curtis, and thank you, everybody, for inviting me. I appreciate it. So I'm here to answer your questions. Where shall we begin?
Councilor Welch?
Yeah, hi, not surprising, Neil, I will ask you about the land stewardship coordinator. We've never had a full-time land stewardship coordinator. Many, many towns don't have one. I think as recently as 2016, we didn't even have a part-time land stewardship coordinator. This is a really tough year. You heard what I was saying. Taxes are up very much. Valuation, the reassessment of valuation is going to hit some people more than others. The town is potentially shrinking. I'm not quite sure if it is, but it might be. But we know UNH is shrinking in terms of the student body that it has here in town. We have a lot of other things that people feel very strongly about should be in the budget. And you've raised the idea of making the land stewardship coordinator a full-time person. So I just find it's a very difficult time to be adding anyone. In fact, given the situation, maybe we should be thinking about subtracting people. So I just like to say I'm consider myself to be an environmentalist. I work with Veronique, and I know she's wonderful, very good at her job, very hardworking. She's I think, fourth in the line of people who have worked probably beyond the hours that they were asked to. But I just think it's the wrong time for us to add another head, full-time head to the town. My experience has been when you add a full-time head, you don't subtract them, although in some cases we've cut people back. And also that it tends to increase in cost year after year. So that's why I'm against it.
Okay, may I respond?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say that it's a misconception that we don't have a full-time land stewardship coordinator. We're just not paying for a full-time land stewardship coordinator, because our land stewardship coordinator that we have right now and previous land stewardship coordinators have worked far many hours than they've gotten paid for. So they're basically working essentially full-time hours at part-time pay. So that's the first point I'd like to make, Cardin, in response to what you said. The second point about towns not having land stewardship coordinators, well, this town is unique in that we have 32.5% of our town land is preserved public land, which is twice as much as the other towns in the 52-town Piscataqua region and the Great Bay watershed. So we have 18 properties, 20 miles of trails, 5,000 acres of preserved land. A lot of this land was given to us by people such as the Doe family, such as the Milnes, such as Shirley Thompson, not with the intent that we were just going to let it sit there, but with the intent that the understanding, implicit or explicit, that we need to steward this land. We have outgrown part-time stewardship. Since 2017, you're right, we didn't have a land stewardship coordinator in 2017. Since that time, we've added hundreds of acres of land and miles of trails. So I agree with you that we are unique in the area because of that. The other part of it that I would like to address even before the question is asked, that what we're asking for in this year, Todd working with us, we've gotten the increased cost down to our conservation budget to $24,900. So when you look at what that cost is per person in the town of Durham, it's about the amount per person that they would pay to go to the works and buy a medium cup of drip coffee, not even a latte. And if we look at the added cost of that over next year, where the land stewardship coordinator would be full-time starting in January, you just add to that maybe a slice of pepperoni pizza from D-Hop. So the cost per person, if we asked the people of Durham, would you be willing to forego a cup of coffee or a slice of pepperoni pizza to have a full-time land stewardship coordinator? The amount of money that we're asking for is really minuscule and is not additive to the tax burden on people when you look at it in that way. So I guess that's my first response.
Okay, my response to the response, and not to be argumentative, but just for us to think about. One, it's, land stewardship is kind of a passion for a lot of people. So we've been very fortunate that the land stewardship people who we had tended to work more than the hours that they were allowed to. In fact, sometimes we gave them an extension of hours toward the end of the year if we could afford it. Mm-hmm. But remember, it's a choice how much they work. So if someone hires me and says, Cardin, I'm hiring you for 20 hours a week and I work 40, that's on me. That's not on my employer that now he has to pay me for 40 hours a week. So just remember, it's a choice, and it's a great one, and we're very happy to have it. We've had it, I think, for 4 consecutive, but it is a choice as to how much they work. Secondly, we've had this land successfully for many, many years. We've had the land for a long period of time. Durham has been well known for conservation, and we have had a lot of conserved property, and we've done it successfully without a full-time steward. Third, I object a little bit to the idea that you cut other things out of your budget so that this really doesn't cost anything, or doesn't cost much. The fact is, this costs about $87,000 a year on an ongoing basis. And that's in addition, long-term, potentially forever, for Durham in its base. The fact that you cut out a lot of things that we're going to need next year, if they were good ideas, or if they weren't good ideas, they should have been cut anyway, doesn't mean that this one is less expensive. It is what it is. It's $87,000 a year. And fourth, to the fact that money is minuscule, because we have such a big budget, in order to get it back to any sort of idea that's reasonable relative to inflation, there's going to have to be a lot of cuts that are smaller than 87,000. So I'm not saying 87,000 is 2026, but it would be 2027. So that's it. But it's a conversation. We have to decide. 9 of us, 5 of us have to agree with you. So keep up the good work.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, Sally.
No,
it's okay. Go ahead.
I just want to respond to.
Yes.
Okay. I think that to say, okay, 2 things. Yes, it is a choice of the land stewardship coordinator currently and the previous land stewardship coordinators to work those extra hours. It was done because that was what was needed to get the basics of the job done. So it's not as though these land stewardship coordinators are working extra hours just for the heck of it. There's work that needs to be done on all these properties. And so because they're passionate about the work, they have put in extra time. Number 2, your point about we haven't had a full-time land stewardship coordinator for all these years. I just want to relate one anecdote. On Friday, Veronique organized for 70 middle school students, 7th graders, to go out to the Thompson Forest and pull invasive species. They were out there for 3 hours and pulled a ton of buckthorn, but only made the smallest dent in it. the biggest threat to our public lands is invasive species, which I don't really have time to go into all the negative effects, but they are crowding out on our public lands native species, which has a whole domino effect to how the land functions and what kind of wildlife it will sustain. So to say that because we have not had one so far that we don't need one is to me like saying, well, I haven't changed my oil yet this year, so I'll be good until next year. There has to be a point, and the point is now, where we have to take the bull by the horns and properly steward the lands. And invasive species and infrastructure are the two things that we really need to tackle. The third point I'd like to address is that, yeah, you can say it's an $87,000 hit, but you have to subtract from that what the part-time land stewardship coordinator would be getting anyway. So it's really only a $50,000 hit. And that's what it would be next year, which is the slice of pepperoni pizza. This year, it would be the $24,900, which is the medium coffee. Okay, Sally, please.
I think in the past, it's also been mentioned that one of the things Veronique could be doing is looking for grant funding.
Correct.
And I don't know if you have a sense, or Veronique does, about what the potential is for that, and is it enough to, help make this position more self-sustaining if it actually brings in money to do work.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I had an email conversation with Carolyn Singer, who we all know her email address is nhgrantwriter. And I asked her that question. I said, number one, how many hours does it take typically for a person to research a grant, apply for the grant, follow up, and then manage the grant if they get the money? She said it's between 40 and 80 hours for each grant. So let's say 60 hours. And she also said that she believes that if our land stewardship coordinator had the time to do this, she could easily pay for her salary and then some, and pay for many, not just paying for what the cost of her salary would be in terms of the amount of money that could come into the town, but also paying for materials, paying for projects. We have a lot of infrastructure projects that we want to do starting in 2026, and we'd be seeking grant money for that. Veronique has been so out straight this year that there's been very little time to apply for grants. So you're absolutely right that being able to marshal that effort to be able to apply for grants, get them and manage them, and also to be able to coordinate more volunteer hours, which is already up to about 600 hours this year that Veronique has done in the job that in the amount of time that she's been able to devote to it. So thank you.
Do you have the sense that grant money's out there, and that there's sufficient grant money out there to help defray the cost of things?
Yes, there is grant money out there, for sure. We've had some conversations together about where specifically she'd be seeking it. Not, the obvious one is the Moose Plate grant. That's the one that a lot of people go to, but there are a lot of smaller grants that are available from some of the organizations, even in our area, some of the natural resource and environmental organizations that can be applied for. Mm-hmm. And in some conversations I've had with Veronique, with people that she's known through her previous jobs, there are sometimes grants go unapplied for. So there's just money out there for the taking. It's just a matter of having those 40 to 60 hours to be able to put in to be able to seek them out.
Just one last thing. I was on land stewardship many years ago, and I very easily could be wrong, but I have the sense that Veronique's being asked to do some of the things that people on the subcommittee used to do. In other words, they've just, over time, people have been, it's something that they had done for years and didn't want to continue to do, but were part of land stewardship. Well, it was something that the land stewardship coordinator could do. So I feel like the expectations have grown, even over the 6 years I've been on the council. So
Well, I think that's true. I think the expectations have grown as our properties have grown, and as it's become apparent that they need more stewardship than people who were, working on the subcommittee, who some of them had jobs, so they couldn't really devote time during the day. So that all had to be done on the weekends, and it just, my understanding from our previous Land Stewardship Subcommittee chair, who Carden, I think, is pretty familiar with.
On occasion, I sleep with her.
It was just
tell
overwhelming. So that's why in 2017, the first contracted land stewardship coordinator was hired. But one point that Carden made that I think is relevant is that since 2017 until now, we've had 4 land stewardship coordinators, an average of 2 years and 4 months each. And from speaking to previous land stewardship coordinators, a large part of the reason why they couldn't continue in the job is that there was too much to do for too little time. So that's my point there. Yes?
Thank you.
So Neil, I know that one of the discussions in this was the kind of overlap that currently exists a little bit between this role and some of what DPW does, whether that's looking at controlling invasives within the town right-of-way, or some of the infrastructure projects on trails. Has there been any further discussion between DPW and the land stewardship role about whether the land stewardship coordinator would be able to kind of take on some of what DPW has been doing, and especially looking at DPW continuing to leave some roles open there that have been filled in the past? So has there been any, final discussion on kind of shuffling of responsibilities, or how that may impact the kind of a shared cost increase between DPW and the land stewardship role?
That has been discussed informally, not actually. There hasn't been any discussion with Rich on that. But in thinking about it and speaking about it informally, there is some overlap in the land stewardship coordinator position and DPW with the control of invasive plant species. So right now, DPW is responsible for controlling invasives in the right-of-way, and land stewardship is responsible for trying to manage invasives on the public land, not on the right-of-way, on trails and anywhere else on the public land. So my feeling is that there might be an opportunity for that in that role, and I can't think of anything else right now where there would be particularly an overlap. Right now, our land stewardship coordinator works very closely with DPW, in terms of like the equipment, tools, coordinating with pickup of some of the materials that have to get dragged off of the public lands, like in the Pike property, for example. A couple of weeks ago, Veronique organized a group of people and townspeople and people from the university or maybe it was the Boy Scouts, to go over and cut down barbed wire, to drag out old fences, iron gates, and that was brought out to the access road on the Pike property that goes down to the river and the water station there. And Sam from DPW was able to come back with a truck and pick all that stuff up. So there's a lot of coordination between land stewardship and DPW. As far as overlap on responsibilities, I think invasives is our biggest opportunity.
Rich Rain is on Zoom. He may have some feedback as well.
Oh, hey, Rich.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I would just echo what Neil has said. There's a lot of synergy between the land stewardship coordinators as well as DPW. We've worked with all of them over the past several years. Neil, we just met down at Oyster River Forest just a couple weeks ago to look at that bridge project and see how DPW might be able to manage that project with Veronique. And actually, I would say Veronique would manage the project and we would provide construction services for that. And in fact, we would be saving significant funding by doing that. I think the original quote that was received was significantly more than what we would be able to do with DPW labor. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of synergies that we find between Veronique and the land stewardship coordinators in the past.
Well said. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything else I can help to clarify?
Go ahead.
Hey, so
Yeah, he's just up there.
I'm waking up.
This woke everybody up.
Yeah, good. So I do want to commend you for the effort you've put into this, and I'm very supportive of this increase and believe that Veronique has done a lot for town already and is currently actively increasing the attractiveness and potentially the value of Durham one trail at a time. However, I want to underscore that my support of this increase is conditional on the fact that Veronique is able to prioritize her time on trail maintenance and updating of those trails and does not get sucked into extraneous tasks. And so as chairman, how are you going to protect her time to ensure if she does get this increase that she is able to prioritize trail maintenance and not get sucked up into Microsoft Office or other bureaucratic tasks?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I will say that I don't know how Veronique or the land stewardship coordinators have worked with the chair of the land stewardship subcommittee in the past, but I can say that Veronique and I work very closely together, and we are working on compiling a project priority list. And once we're actually working actively on it now. So we meet once a week or once every 2 weeks. We go over what project she's working on. I get updated on how they're going, where some sticky points are. I offer my help when I can. But the main point that I want to make is that as the Land Stewardship Subcommittee, one of our roles is to direct the activities of the Land Stewardship Coordinator. So what Veronique's priorities are really completely in our hands on the subcommittee, and as the chairperson, I can have an active influence over that.
And I think you may have to, because as people see a salaried individual, they might think they can start pushing off other extraneous responsibilities like Sally was mentioning. But thank you very much for your comment. I do have one thing for the council here, just while I'm bumping my gums and taking time. So I picked Durham, obviously, and I think I'm one of the more recent movers into Durham for our walkability and safety and education and the ability to force bathe and still have access to modern amenities and hospitals and transportation. I think well-kept trails encourage out-of-towners like me to show up. Out-of-towners in the area to come to downtown and even get parents to spend a little bit more time in Durham instead of taking their kids to Boston or Portsmouth. I think one of those benefits directly leads to success increases in Durham business. Do I think that's a $20,000 to $50,000 increase in 1 year? No, but I do think it's a continual trend of trying to get people to not focus on leaving Durham, but focus on spending time in Durham, spending money in Durham. So I think this recommendation is in alignment with 2 to 7 of our goals. I couldn't figure out a way to tie it to goal 1, but I can figure an argument between 2 through 7. And I don't know that there are many goals that hit 90% of your goal targets. A lot of Durham's success is directly attributed to good folks that choose to work in Durham and then devoted families that have trusted Durham with their properties upon their expiration. Trail maintenance is a responsibility to encourage future families to leave their land in our trust. So how we choose to take care of that land will have impacts on how people choose to give it to us. That's my thoughts.
Can I make one more comment on that, which I actually should have said? Heather, excuse me 1 minute.
It's okay.
One of the things that Veronique's responsibility is to supervise the volunteer land steward program. So every one of our properties has at least one land steward who's a volunteer who is charged with going out onto the property once a month or once every 6 weeks and actually actively walking the trails, clearing fallen branches, taking care of anything that's maybe blocking the trail, brushing it out so that there's enough room on either side, And if the trail steward comes across anything that needs active work from DPW, say like a fallen log that has to be cut, there's an app that they fill out that tells where they are, where the obstruction is, what needs to be done, and that goes directly to Veronique, who contacts DPW. You know, Rich can attest to this as well. And someone is sent out with a chainsaw or whatever needs to be done. So trail maintenance is a very big part of Veronique's responsibility through this land, through the land steward program.
Or- Thank you.
Yes, Heather?
So regarding the position, the one thing that when I heard about it being part-time and coming over and wanting to be full-time, my biggest concern was the fact that we have somebody that we're contracting for part-time with the full understanding that that person is working full-time already. So you have a part-time contract, and you're basically challenging them with the amount of goals as a full-time person. And we can call that volunteering, but I think that is an abuse of what we really would be wanting to do for a person that's really working full-time. I just, you would never do that in the business, have uncompensated overtime. So I don't understand how we can consider this to be legitimate unless we truly force them not to work more than 20. And I've run into that situation before, and I just don't feel very comfortable doing that. And I see that if it's a full-time position, it's a full-time position. We should recognize the amount of tasks that are involved and pay for the work itself. That's just the way, no matter what that position was, whether it's land stewardship and conservation or somewhere else, it's not something we should be doing, not to our people.
Thank
That's
you.
my only opinion.
Well, thank you.
Oh, okay. Did you want to say something, Robin? Or
Yeah.
am I done?
I just had one comment to add to this, and thank you for being here, Neil. I don't know how much you're aware of this, or even the public is aware of this, but a very important period just ended in the Department of the Interior. The public lands rule is looking to be rescinded by Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. And where that applies to federal lands specifically, there's a subcommittee that's being formed at the national level to look at state and municipal lands as well. So my concern is that the Department of the Interior, with this public comment ending, and eyes being set not just on federal lands, but local and municipal and state lands, that by having a part-time position and having that be well documented, word gets around pretty quickly. And based on this, it would remove the term conservation directly from the public lands rule and rescind the entire thing in whole. So therefore, we are not talking about anything being conservation land if the Department of the Interior goes forward with this. So my concern is that if we have somebody who is part-time, how does that look at the larger level of them saying which areas do we either look at for development on a federal level, or give the states the power to go into and take a look at? If you see part-time, it's kind of like, oh, okay, we can just walk on in there. But do you see, and this is my question for you, with the possibility of having somebody come in, and I'm in full support of somebody coming in and being a full-time land stewardship manager, would you see that individual kind of being somebody who keeps an eye on this? I know we talked about grants as well. This public rule being rescinded also takes a look at grants that are available as well and could take them out of the circulation.
Wow.
So would you see somebody like this kind of being at the forefront of, I know we're not talking about added responsibilities, but it could drastically affect how Durham's public lands could possibly be seen. So do you see this person as being kind of the front line to that?
Well, this is the first that I'm hearing about it, Robin. So
Yeah.
I'd have to give that some thought as how that would work in with the other responsibilities
Sure.
of the position. So I don't think I can give you a really comprehensive.
Sure. It's a lot.
Yeah, I don't think I can give you an answer right now that would, really be well informed. But
Sure.
I do thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All set? Anybody else?
Did you want to say something?
I was just going to note on the, we try to be thoughtful about this budget, and there's a reason for the picture on the cover. It's 2 arrows, like which way are we going to go? And I think this is one of those issues exactly. We've got an absolutely outstanding land stewardship coordinator and a really engaged committee, and a community that values conservation and values sustainability and wants to get out on the property and on our lands. And I hear people wanting more, wanting to do more, wanting to take more initiative. And we don't have the resources. And so I thought it was important to bring this forward to the council because I think it's a worthy ask. It's completely justified. It is a terrible budget year for it, but really the council is the body that has to decide which way are we going with this. So do you want more of the same, or do you want us to reach and really take the next step? And I think really exciting prospect if it can take the next step. I'll note as well in terms of overall headcount, while I do view personnel as fixed costs, they're not immovable, and they do change over time. And you'll note in this year's budget, 2 full-time positions, the DCAT coordinator and the code officer, are being downgraded to part-time positions based upon unique circumstances with the people who held those offices. And net is actually a drop of 0.25% of personnel. So even with this addition. So I wanted to just note that as well.
Okay.
Very rare.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Neil.
you, Neil.
Yep, thank you.
Darcy, Greer, like to come up?
And I will note, Darcy is on the next council agenda to give an update on the statistical update. So please hold those questions, because she'll be here with a lot of detail at the next meeting and is working on a great PowerPoint for you. But this is really more about the budget of the department.
Appreciate that. I'm assuming otherwise there would be a lot of questions.
I don't think there's much in the budget.
No, it's very straightforward, you know, it's the
Do
full-time.
you think we should keep you hired?
I hope so. I do have a $250 increase in my postage budget. So there's that.
Should keep that one quiet.
Shouldn't offer things like that.
Does anyone have any specific questions or issues?
So in the next council meeting, you're going to tell us all about the statistical update and give us a range of how much someone, the high end of a reassessment and the low end of a reassessment for the different property groups.
I can certainly include the high and the low end of each. It wasn't going to be, I didn't have that as part of it. I have a lot of our statistics and where we came out with those. I have a few charts and things showing the shift of the burden, because there is a shift of the tax burden this time around due to the market. I have a few other things. I have 12 slides at the moment. It's getting there. We literally just finished Thursday around 8 p.m. finished up the values. I took a little bit of time this weekend to decompress and then dove into it today for the most part. So I'm getting there, but yes, I can certainly include high and low values for the different property types. Commercial would be a little hard to do because there's only
so many
one
different things,
of certain things, so that one value does make that market. But yeah, for residential, that would be easy.
Yeah, I think we're most interested in the shift of the tax burden, which you're prepared to talk about, so that's great.
It is there.
Just one question.
Yeah.
So in the notes under the contracted services, we have this $17,200 to continue a 5-year utility contract with a particular individual consultant. So what year are we in on that? And do we find that it's value added, or is it competitive, or could we get it less if we're going to continue this year after year after year after year?
So it ends April 1st of 27, so we have 2 more years worth of that contract. There's several options. We can choose to not renew the contract, and I can take on utility values, probably with some assistance, but not as much assistance. We could go out to bid and see what we get. There are very few utility appraisers.
Yeah.
And most
Pretty-
of them
pretty
are
niche.
in retirement era. So I'm not sure what we would get for bids coming back.
And we're under appeal, so we'd like to get through those appeals,
Yes,
riding the same horse, basically,
that,
before we make a change, because those appeals will affect what comes.
correct. And a lot of the RSAs that have come down have simplified the methodology for utilities. It's pretty straightforward on the most part. You do X, X, and X, and that is your value, as long as you get the information from the utility companies, which can sometimes be a bit of a burden, but.
Okay.
Do you have, I'm sorry, maybe I should know, but do you have a sense of what the total utility assessment in Durham is?
Yep.
It's like, is it 9 million? Is that about 9? No. 100
Utilities?
Yeah, 106,
100 and,
it's
it,
106 million?
114 million, just a little over that. There's some change in there. Last year was 103.
It's like up 9 million.
11, about 11.
11,
Oh, maybe, no,
okay.
maybe 10, 5, somewhere in that range.
And I just comment, if I remember when we did this contract that's existing, there were, I think, 2 vendors in the whole state of New Hampshire that were possible.
That sounds about right for what still exists.
But it may not be necessary in the future, based on the simplification.
Possibly not, yep.
Yeah.
Councilor Ford?
Do you have any idea or sense of when the appeals will be completed?
January is what the attorneys are telling us.
Oh, okay. It's pretty
Well,
soon.
January for the bulk of them. The PSNH did appeal for 24 now. So, but the court lumped the 24 case in with the existing case, whether right or wrong. But so theoretically, whatever is decided on in January is when we think we'll have the outcome. Would be the methodology, preferred methodology moving forward.
That's the utility. Are you asking about all of the cases, though?
No, the utilities.
Yeah.
And that's January of 2026, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
That's our hope.
It's been going on a long time. That's
It's
why I
been
asked.
stalled. The trial was in April, and both parties returned their final arguments to the court in August, and we've just been sitting, waiting, so hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
How about the big student housing? When do you expect those to be resolved?
So we're in potential settlement talks to have them resolved when budget's approved in '26. Because currently there wouldn't be funds to do so because of how large they are.
Any other questions for our assessor? Well, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Feel like I got off too easy.
We'll get you next week.
Exactly.
Is for code, is Audrey here?
Next is code enforcement, and Audrey is here.
Oh, there she is, okay. Audrey Klein with code enforcement.
Do you mind if I stand up?
Please.
I'm going to try to beat Darcy's time.
Good luck. What page are you, do you know?
28.
Hey, I got that right.
And I think
Well,
like,
in our book, it's 51,
51.
50, 51, 52.
No, I saw that one.
so I think like one of the things that it's important to realize with the budget for this department is that we don't have the staffing hours, we won't, that we had this past year. So that means fewer hours out looking at parking issues in neighborhoods, looking at trash in neighborhoods, availability to respond immediately to concerns about zoning or code issues or alteration of terrain topics. So everyone has to go into this budget, if we stay part-time, understanding that and sort of realizing that.
Yeah, code enforcement will look a bit different this year, so we'll see how that goes.
Question. Back on page 21, under general fund revenue, building inspection fees and building permits for Riverwoods were listed at $50 and $0. And so I'm wondering, on page 51, line 267, there's a $15,000 expense for outside inspectors that is reimbursed by Riverwoods. And maybe Gail could help with this too. I don't know where that $15,000 is reflected in the general fund revenue. It may just lumped in there, but I was curious because we pay to have the inspectors come. Riverwood, sounds like Riverwoods reimburses us. I just couldn't tell where they would come back as revenue.
So I'm not sure I can answer that, maybe Gail can, but the inspection and review is part of the expenses carried by Riverview, and part is carried by the town of Durham. We've got a much smaller part than Riverwoods does. They're going to be, this amount on my budget would be for the potential of hiring a third party that we're responsible for. And again, that's only potential. We don't know how the project's going to go or what we might need.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's just in the notes. It says hiring of outside inspectors for specialized services. Riverwoods will reimburse the town for any expenses incurred. But that doesn't. But maybe not. I don't know exactly how to interpret it.
Well, does this follow with the new state law that outside
No,
consultants?
that's a whole different piece. This is more like how we would normally administrate a project. We take in the building permit fees. They're responsible for a number of engineering inspections that they pay for, and I review the information. That's our part, is reviewing the information of their professionals. But there are some things that our department are responsible for, some certain particular inspections, unless we hire out for a third party to replace ourselves, in which case we would pay them. That's what that line is potentially used for.
I guess
It's under the building permit revenue.
it is. Okay, so it shows up coming in.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Can I just ask to follow up on that, the new law? So if your office is backlogged and the applicant wants to move things along, do they have the ability to hire an approved vendor to add to the town's staff?
That it's very similar. In the building code, there's a chapter under which the project has to have certain types of inspectors that are outside the ability of a typical town inspector, engineers to check the concrete, weight and things like that. So it works very much that way, but the legislation has taken it all the way, and they say that potentially a project can hire all of that, and the town, and then not pay the building permit fee except for 20%, at which point that would cover pretty much what we already do, which is the administration or oversight of those reports and approval of the reports. So one of the difficulties I think they'll find is they're kind of assuming there are lots of engineers and people who are certified to inspect running around looking for work. In fact, we're probably already working for towns for the most part, or for engineering firms. So yes, in the case where it could possibly work, but I'm waiting to see that really work well for any project. In towns that have virtually no building office, that's what they would do.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I think also with Riverwoods, I don't believe they're planning to start construction until '27, so it's possible that there won't be a huge amount that happens in '26. I'm not sure, so.
Yeah, I mean, they're claiming they're going to be, people will be moving in at the end of 2027.
They are, okay,
So.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
there's a lot of earthwork and that type of work to do starting mid next year. So that's going to take them, well into the winter next year to start getting out of the ground.
All right, everybody good? Well, thank you.
Audrey?
Oh, wait.
When you decided to move to part-time, is that because there seems to be less demand now in the town?
It was because I reached retirement age. And it coincided with the thought, well, is this a good time to hire a brand-new full-time person? And the answer is not really.
Because there's no major construction going on.
That's right.
That's right.
And it's more, there's not a lot of little construction, because again, the major constructions, a lot of that work is done by outside vendors, which is why, a small office can manage those types of projects.
But, if we found next year, mid-year, for some reason, construction really upticked and we weren't able to keep up, we may be back to say, hey, we have a problem, we need to ramp up a little or scale up more. But
Right. Yep.
we don't see it right now.
In that time period, that's when we might use that 15,000 to kind of take up that, in between, a little bit more than I can do, but not quite have hired somebody else yet.
Yeah. We also, we have some funds for a part-time person to help, and that was Dre, who was going out to sort of inspect things. But Dre has taken a position with the sheriff's department as a sheriff and is no longer with us, at least for now. So we'll see. Our hope is Audrey can just kind of handle it, but we may look for someone like that again if complaints uptick. But we hope to stay in the
Right.
part-time mood.
Yeah. And I expect that probably won't happen until spring, when we really start seeing the difference between the ability of Dre to keep a handle on everything very promptly and, me doing it about half as much as she would. Might become an issue, and at that point, we might hire somebody part-time.
Right, and UNH is down, as Card mentioned, 1,000 students. They're projecting in the next 5 years, maybe another 1,000 students. So, and you're right, we are in a population decline. It's the students who are declining, not the non-student year-round population that's staying constant, but still, it's fewer. So my hope is that will mean fewer complaints, less trash, but
The other thing that impacts that is Dre was doing such an excellent job, and I trained her too well. She went on to the sheriff's department. That we have almost direct communication with almost all of the landlords that we have problem properties with. So now it's, we see something, we can email them, and they'll email or text their, tenants, and that makes it a lot quicker, and they've gotten used to that kind of correspondence from us. So hopefully that will continue to make it more efficient.
I do think, though, that Durham's year-round population is also declining, at least since 2016, because family sizes are smaller, and a lot of, folks are choosing to retire and continue to live in Durham, which is wonderful, but I think their population is aging as well. So you have a lot of households that are 1 or 2 adults, and then for households that have children, those sizes are smaller as well.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, planning.
And I will beat Audrey time-wise.
Yeah, there's nothing there. I mean,
Does anybody have any planning points or issues they'd like to bring up? As regards to
nothing
the
on there.
budget?
I mean, were you gonna take $100 off of his paper bill or something?
So I just, with planning, I would note, like we've talked about the master plan, it's more than 10 years old. Usually every 10 years or so you do an update. We've talked about like a downtown study of some type, and I just want to note there's no money allocated for that purpose in '26. Our thought is in '27, we would kick off a master plan process. But
Later in the year.
Right. And, but I just want to let you know, right now, it's not programmed in for 26.
Later in the year of 27, you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, just to, I do plan on retiring sometime in 2027, summer or later in the year, and it depends how various projects are going at that time. I may want to stick around a little longer, but I'm thinking that for the next master plan, that will be an excellent project for the next planner. Great way to get oriented to the communities.
And my hope was that...
And avoiding pain.
Or disoriented.
Right, and ideally, we'd have the new planner coincide with Michael, so there's overlap, and the new planner could work on the master plan, which is like a full-time gig. It's a big job, while Michael focuses on general planning, and then as that moves on, Michael would phase out into retirement, and the new planner would take over. But then they'd have the real benefit of really understanding Durham and where we're heading.
Do you remember how much the last master plan cost? There's 2015, I believe, was when it
Right.
happened.
Well, you can do master plans in many different ways. You can do it all at once, which is, I think Laconia just had a proposal for $100,000 for a full master plan. So that's kind of the range. But in 15, we did it in chapters over a number of years. So we could do it that way as well.
And doing it that way, can it be started in 26 versus 27, or it takes money to do it that way as well?
I mean, it takes money to do it that way as well.
And it takes time.
And it takes time.
So in the August 21st, 2015 Friday update, it was $180,000.
For the whole master plan?
And that was accumulation of 4 years of work, it says here.
And the more time you give it, the work will fill it up.
It will.
So it's really good to like have an end date.
I think we need to be very deliberate.
Yeah, and Durham struggles with master planning because everybody gets very engaged and it tends to extend it. Rewrite after rewrite, and yes.
Well, I just wanted to reinforce your point of having the dual income payroll of a planner who's managing the day-to-day and a planning lead to lead the master plan. That means we can't hire an entry-level guy. We need to hire somebody that's got some clout that can handle a conversation between passionate individuals and not get derailed very easily. Because I do think it is in our best interest to have a robust master plan deliberation, but to have a concise one as well. One that has a clear end date so that we don't continue to let the good idea fairy run up the costs and run up the ideas.
And we are actually scheduling a meeting with Jen Sizz from the Stratford Regional Planning Commission with Michael and Paul Rasmussen and myself to just get some ideas from them about different approaches and to talk it through. So, and the question is, would we want to do it all in-house or contract some of it out? We don't know. So it's still, in my mind, it's a good year and a half off.
This is what my sibling does for a living, is contracted master plans. A lot of times that contracted person does provide all of the additional personnel that's needed to support a master plan. So a lot of communities run on their existing planning department plus the contracted services. I would be a little wary of having an existing planning department, a new person, and be paying a contractor.
I think that's a valid point.
It's a lot. But I think the other thing you have to deal with, and you know, I read back in history of the master plan situation, and one of the end comments that came from one of the consultants is you're going to have a consistent butting of the heads between your housing needs and your conservation, because there's a need and a love, and you know, for both of those things, and it's going to be in conflict because we didn't mesh those ideas with a balance to try and actually have decision making in every one of those is its own little funnel without a lot of interaction on how you're going to balance everybody's needs. Like you said, everybody's passionate about their section. So that's something we have to think about in '27, but we should be talking about 2026 budget.
Yeah. So three master plans ago, we had our in-house person do it. That was Dwayne Hyde. And the last 2 times we've contracted out. Once to a company from far away, and the second time to the SRPC. So you raise a great point. We don't really have the answer of exactly how we'll do it yet.
I do have 2 line item questions for Michael. So I noticed the addition of part-time wages for a college student to assist with administrative duties. I am a little concerned that we're hearing there's a downtick in construction. So I'm wondering why we're hiring someone to help with administrative duties for these departments if we're not seeing as much activity.
We have presently, Sienna Shire is working 2 days a week. I don't know if it's 16 hours, but I think it's in that range. And she's been working with us for at least 6 months or so. It's mainly administrative tasks, and the Tracy Cutler is covering for 3 departments: planning, assessing, and building. And it's just a ton of work. It's frankly a little bit overwhelming for, I think, anyone in that position, between being at the desk and all the people that come in, and that's contractors, it's people that want to see Darcy for assessing issues, certainly now with the reval, and then people that want to see me. So it's a very demanding time-wise and even psychically, with lots of people coming in. Sometimes there'll be 2 people in the office, and the phone is ringing regularly. And so Tracy has to answer the phone, deal with that. She has to deal with people who walk into the office. And then she has a lot of other tasks that she has to do: maintaining the website, making appointments, and handling all the public notices, and then a lot of other tracking. So it is overwhelming, and happily Sienna's been there and has been very helpful in taking a lot of that stuff off of Tracy.
The short answer is it's really more than, the requirements are more than just one person, but we're having one person take it all on. So to make that sustainable, we're trying to provide some minimal additional hours to help with remedial stuff, so that the admin assistant can keep on top of things, be proactive, and not make mistakes.
I mean, I do think that it was very effective for the town clerk's office, which also handles a huge number of tasks, public coming in, phone calls, to have gone to a schedule where Wednesdays they're not open to the public. Is that something that your department has considered, to give Tracy and all staff kind of that opportunity to focus, play catch up, not have those interruptions and distractions, and to do so with, more limited budget?
Interesting idea. We have not thought about that. And we certainly could, Audrey and Darcy are both gone. I'm sorry.
Just slander them.
We certainly could think about that. I'm there, all the time, 5 days, and Darcy is as well. So we're there, so we wouldn't want to close the office, but, we're open to any ideas. Yeah.
I mean, it does seem to be working well in the tax collector's office. I would not be opposed to it. If I didn't have interruptions one day a week, I'd get a lot done. But also I understand the demand of people needing to see Michael, people needing to see me, people needing to see Audrey. So you kind of have to weigh the balance of whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah.
And then certainly would want to probably still be open the days the clerk's office would be open, and closed a separate day. That way it's not two major offices being closed. Those would be my initial thoughts on that, but.
I think it's an interesting thing that a lot of municipalities around the state do. Past jobs that I've worked have been working with municipal officials, and a lot of towns, they're only open Tuesday, Thursday, or they're not open 5 days a week. And it's not that their staff isn't working. Their staff may be working more hours than that, as would be this case, but it does allow people to have that uninterrupted work, which is very valuable. And then I was also wondering, the travel and mileage reimbursement, that went up significantly this year. Could you speak a little bit about that for this year's budget?
Oh, which item is that?
Travel and mileage reimbursement?
Right. That was, in the 2025 budget, that was $300. That was actually an error. It has been in the range of the 2020, the actual 22, 23, 24. Was that actual expenditures or the budget amount? I guess it was the actual expenditures.
Should be.
Yeah. Well, historically, it's been in the $1,500, $2,000 range. For whatever reason, I think there was just a mix-up in last year's budget.
I think you weren't able to attend something last year.
No,
Is that right?
I because we did spend a fair amount of money last year as well. It was just some confusion in preparing it. It might have been line items that were switched for some reason.
Can you look at that, Gail, please? Because it looks like it's too high. Same with phone and same with office and computer supplies. They all look high.
It looks like in 2025, maybe the cell phone and the travel get mixed up, put on the wrong line.
Oh, that may have been it. Yeah. I'm not sure.
That might explain 25 budget, 26 budget as well. Yeah, Todd, so I can understand this, the part-time wages that Henry brought up. So this is a brand-new person who doesn't exist now.
No, we've been,
Because there's no cost here in 2025.
that's correct. We were unable to keep up with the work there. And so the solution was bringing in the UNH, one of our interns, Santa Shire, to try to plug that gap, to just,
And we didn't pay her.
no, we have been paying her.
Oh, but it's not in this.
Right, it's being charged to the town administrator department, because we
Okay.
didn't have money allocated here. So next year, it's being allocated here rather than there.
Gail, can you tell us how much that was for the next meeting?
It was not officially allocated. We brought it on as an intern. So there was no funds budgeted in 25. We just did.
Mike, can you say the mic? Yeah, sorry.
So we did not officially fund her in 25. We brought her on board as an intern, and then she's remained working,
But you paid her.
but we pay her.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
can you just let us know what we paid her in 2025?
What we're paying her, yep.
That'd be great.
But I do think that there's a concern that if our answer to the work is overwhelming is to hire someone else, that to me is a concern, and it's not the way that I've operated in nonprofits or in for-profit organizations, that if the work is overwhelming, it means you have to reprioritize. I think that potentially looking at, being open 4 days a week to the public could perhaps be a good, solution in this situation.
I think that's true with the whole budget. There's a lot of things where I believe historically when the work got to be too much, we added a person. And I think, given that now it's potentially the town's infrastructure is too big for the town, or getting too big for the town, there has to be some sort of reprioritization or rethinking about how we do things.
And might that, I heard say that if you were to close to the public, you'd want to do it on a day that the town clerk is not closed, but it would seem maybe should be the same day so that people know, well,
Yes.
on Wednesday, the public's not coming to the building. That's a Wednesday work day for everybody, every department, interdepartment work. Rather than guess, oh geez, is that department open today or not open today? It can get confusing because you often would have to go to multiple departments if you're coming in here, or can go to multiple departments.
Yeah, I just know it's a very different way of thinking, neither good nor bad. We've looked at it in the past, and the feeling was that the contractors representing the taxpayers get very upset if they're not able to come in and get the permit they want and get to work. So to be convenient, we've ensured it's open, and we've had to take the steps we've had to take to make sure we're actually able to manage that workload. So this was a stopgap measure for an office that was kind of drowning. They didn't have the resources to keep up.
And I would just note, though, that a lot of municipalities around the state, they are not available 5 days a week for those people to, you know, and you adjust your schedule accordingly. I mean, those folks are usually working 5 days a week, and, you know, they maybe have to go to the town offices on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday. It's not their preferred thing, but they make it happen.
Yes, and those contractors don't get instant gratification at Comcast or at Eversource or any other place, or DOT or any other place they're going to get their permits, so.
Yeah, we're happy to look at anything, although I do think it's working well with a part-time intern. And that approach would be to assist the administrative assistant in the department. I'm there most of the time, except when I'm out, and unless I'm in the middle of something, I really, when Tracy calls me so-and-so, people just walk in. Most of the time I'm able to come see them on the spot, and I'm happy to do that. I enjoy seeing drop-ins. So I wouldn't want to, what we're doing now works well, at least for me. I can't speak for Darcy, and Audrey's there just Tuesdays and Thursdays, so.
And then one last question, for the contracted services, just a little confusion, the off-site storage of documents, is that, what are the services being continued? Because it says that the specialized outside inspections was moved to the engineering division. So what is remaining for the 2026 budget year, is that for off-site storage of documents only?
Yes.
Okay, and is there any way of bringing those documents into the town hall basement or any other space?
We don't have the room for them. We've gone through and sort of winnowed down documents, but what's off-site, there just isn't space for in this building. So that's the reason they're still there. We've looked at that in the past.
And not at, say, any other town-owned building? We have the Parks and Rec building, we have the Chesley house, which is going to be completed. We have a lot of town buildings that the library, potentially to be storing this instead of additional contracted services.
We can certainly ask. We can ask. To date, our feeling was this was the best approach. Safe, secure, available.
Presumably there is a security requirement.
Yes, that's correct. So it allows us to ensure that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it would need to be a locked room that is not, accessible to the public, but,
There were improvements talked about for the Parks and Rec building in the basement, perhaps dry it out and perhaps make some storage space there, but I don't know if that's advanced at all.
No, we're looking, our hope is to get through the Bickford Chesley house before we really focus in a year or two on the former town hall, the old town hall. But you would not want to put anything in the basement there now.
No.
One other quick clarification here. I assume that there is some liability on the storage agency for keeping the stuff secure, is that correct?
I believe so.
If there's environmental, like insurance type stuff. Because we have already had several leaks within this brand new building that could have been catastrophic if it was written property records and electronic storage units that had been damaged in those things. And I know we had a near miss with our ballots because of it. And so I don't know that we have the space. I think keeping the liability away from the town is probably cheaper.
Any other questions or comments on planning? Well, thank you, Michael.
Great, thank you very much.
Rachel Dean, our town clerk and tax collector. Whichever you prefer.
Going with the podium.
Okay. Making sure I'm not going through menopause.
The two aren't mutually exclusive.
So just to, something you mentioned a couple of years ago, not in this year's budget, but in the year prior's budget, you mentioned a possible revenue source around wedding licenses because they were very popular. And there was some question at the time whether Wagon Hill would be any kind of venue for the town to couple with that to create revenue. So it didn't go anywhere at the time. But I just bring it up again if for any consideration by this council. Is it something, I'm not saying we should compete with the private sector in that because it's a very tough business. I know firsthand it is. But it does seem like that is a great venue and that is what a lot of people would like to be. It creates a different experience up there than what's going on there now. And our fellow councilor Burton might be quite upset if it would go that way, but it was an idea that you had floated a couple of years ago that brought revenue into the town.
Yeah, I think,
it's kind of an interesting way to do it.
Good memory.
You were the only department that came up with revenue.
I do remember that, and it's funny because I just read a really fascinating article in the New York Times about trends with weddings, and it seems like folks are moving away from the big popular style of having big venues and big weddings, and more folks are turning to town clerks to get their license, and then they do a small event later. So that would be in line with trends. If you wanted to promote it, we could look at that. The town clerk's office would be amenable to that. We probably would want to build up the website a little bit. I don't know, what kind of advertising we would do around that. But I think there's opportunity there, and it certainly could be explored if you wanted to do that.
I think another caveat to that idea is if we could work a collaboration between Emery Farm, you wouldn't have to hold the liquor license on the town's liability. Because they serve alcohol now at Emery Farm.
I will also add, as somebody who was just married last year and had to help front the cost of some of that. I mean, you're talking $36,000 to $40,000, even for a small wedding with everything included. So I would say, as somebody who was actively searching for an opportunity for a much more affordable wedding option, if I knew that the town was offering something at a much lower rate and that it'd be local and small, I think that's very appealing to a lot of folks.
Sure. It's one of our most favorite transactions that we do. So we wouldn't be opposed to expanding it if you wanted us to look into that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments for Rachel?
I'm just wondering, as I'm scraping, looking for savings, the overtime wages,
Yes.
your run rate is very low, 700 this year.
Yeah.
But you're asking for 2,000 next year?
Yeah, I thought about that, and I looked at that too, Cardin, so I'm glad you're pointing it out. We have 3 elections next year. If you really wanted to bring it down, you could. It's just provides us a little bit of cushion if Audrey and or Maura have to work more. With the 2026 election cycle, we'll have 2 major elections. We'll have a state primary and a state general election. So it's possible that Audrey would be going over because she works with me at those elections. They typically go 18 hours each election. So we could, if you wanted to. I could go it alone at the election.
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't want to do that, but
we actually have a very vibrant group of volunteers.
We
at
do,
all
but
the
they're not all
elections.
trained or certified to do the work that Audrey does. She's very specific. But yes, we do. Yeah.
Just, I think it's going to be a rough year, and there are a lot of changes, and I think we're going to have a lot of questions and
Yeah.
confusion, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. I
Oh,
agree.
changes on who can vote, how they,
At
what
the
they have
state
to
level, the
show. Yeah.
documentation you
Yeah.
need.
How about the
There's lots of
equipment?
changes.
Is the equipment going to be?
Just trying to get involved.
We just got new stuff.
New
Yeah, I know, I was going to
equipment.
say, did the new
Yeah. The new
equipment?
voting equipment, but you're doing training already for that.
Yes, so
Running
we
the-
have already purchased the new electronic
Yep,
counting
I
ballot
remember.
devices. We are on track to continue with the replacement. This is not on my budget, but the moderator's budget. We are
yeah.
on track to replace the voting booths. So we are trying to do that in a very being mindful of that. So we only do a few at a time each year. And then we have new maintenance costs for the new machines. So those machines are new and they're great, but they also cost a little bit more to service. So, and in addition to that, the state has also punted the accessible voting machine programming requirements to our community, to each municipality. So we're taking on that burden as well. So moderator's budget's going up. All of that stuff's related to elections and those changes. Yeah.
And supervisor's budget as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Because of the three elections.
Any other comments or questions?
You know, your contracted services
Yes.
is also, your run rate's about 13,000. You're asking for 19,000.
The contracted services, I just was looking at the bills and how they've increased over time. Contracted services, we have going up only 2%. What are you looking at?
I'm looking at your run rate through the
Okay.
first 9 months.
Okay.
It seems to be about 13,000.
Yeah, a large portion of that is actually Loomis, which is our armored car service that comes to pick up our deposits. There's an increase in the amount for liability when we go over a certain dollar amount. We've talked about negotiating that, but I don't think we can.
Isn't
sorry,
it tied
Tom.
somewhat to what they're bringing in? So won't the final bill be much higher because it'll be the final tax bill?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the charge goes up because
So in the fourth quarter, it's always larger than the other 3 quarters. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Loomis that's impacting that.
$10,000, I'll do it.
Got the guard dogs already.
That's right.
Got the cost.
One thing I'll let you know, though, is we don't process payments outside any longer. We cut that contract with Lighthouse Payments. We do it all in-house now. So we did save a little bit there. I think we saved between 2024 and 2025, we saved, I think, around $7,000 on that. So I did cut that last year. And we're doing it in-house, and it's been successful so far. Yeah.
Could you take another look at that 18,900?
Sure,
Please.
yeah.
Any other questions, Carden?
Nope.
Well, thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome. I think I beat both Michael and Audrey.
You did.
I'm winning.
Let's keep the trend.
Should be a new, I think we should sponsor a town staff contest here, right?
I'll be down.
And now from Rachel to Rachel.
We could all pitch in for like a gift certificate for, at least some lunch.
Oh, heck yeah, that'd be easy.
Then they'd be cutting us off.
Yeah, yeah.
You're like, nope, we can't answer that. Keep going.
So we have Rachel Gosowski from Parks and Rec. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Rachel?
Hi. Hi, Rachel. Just one, just looking at the notes on page 93 of our book, which would be, what page it is for you. Anyways, it's about the tennis courts and the pickleball courts.
So for the CIP?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. And I think the notes were a little confusing because it's, I think, if I understand it correctly, with your 2026, you're looking at just the work on the courts. And then in 2027, you're looking at the pavilions for Jackson Landing and for Woodridge.
It would just be for Woodridge, although 2027, I think we can hold off on discussing, that at the moment, because I think that will change up a little bit for us. So 2026, though, with the courts, yes, that would be.
But not a pavilion?
No, there would be some shelter in place there, but not the actual pavilion.
Okay.
That would be down the road.
All right, so the 2027 CIP might not be the...
We probably will be making some adjustments to that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Gravity.
Yeah, Rachel, is there any reason the tennis and pickleball courts can't be delayed a year?
There is a significant crack on, I call it court number 2, so it's the second one in. If you visit the courts, on all 4 courts, down the middle of it, there's a good-sized crack that has continued to grow each year. But on court 2, that's not really the safety concern there. On court 2, though, there's a good-sized crack. We're talking probably, at least 2 inches that comes down the playing surface of it. We've tried to close it down, but when we go out there, people are moving the barriers out of the way. So there is the safety concern there. The cracks are getting larger, and I would hate to see them get to the point where, it's a bigger issue, similar to what UNH encountered or our high school encountered, where it was a total redo of digging them up and starting from scratch.
Would it be, is there any, I guess I should wait till Todd gets back just to make sure, but could we do an intermediate fix with Quickcrete to prevent an expansion, but without having to do a full resurface?
So just to clarify too, to just make sure that we're on the same page, resurface meaning...
So the $100,000 is what I am equating to the resurfacing efforts. Is there a way that we could go to Lowe's and buy Quickcrete and mix it in there, and just to keep it from expanding for another year or so? I don't know if that voids any liability for the town or anything along those lines, but I think I kind of agree with Cardin on this one. If there's a way that we can delay this, not to terminate it, because I don't want to, because pickleball is fun. I'm in your classes on Tuesdays. I'm learning how to swing the bat for everybody else who shows up as an Olympian.
It's not a bat.
Yeah, it's whatever it is.
Paddle.
But is there, if there's a way to kick this can a little bit further down the road, I think it would be to the benefit of the taxpayers.
We can certainly explore that. I would say that in talking with the professionals who do this, it would be something, an application that they would apply. The courts haven't been resurfaced. And again, when I say resurface, I don't mean digging them up from scratch. I mean recoating them.
Certainly.
They haven't been done since 2015.
Sure.
They're starting to definitely show their age. If you go out there as well and play, the texture is starting to wear as well, becoming slippery if it's at all wet out there. We did look at just having them come in and deal with the cracks, and it was fairly expensive to do so. So while they're out there, we figured.
No, I definitely agree with the sentiment.
And in that quote too, the 100,000 does include some more shade structures out there.
I wonder about the source of the cracking, whether it does require some more looking at the underlayment for the...
Yeah, the company that we brought out there, they were fairly confident that the application that they used, which is specific to repairing these cracks, for tennis courts, they felt as though we had, catching it at a good time to do so. If I'm remembering correctly as well, the application that they use is specific to, courts that they would work on here in the Northeast versus something like
New England's frost heaves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's frost action. that causes
Yeah.
that. But it hasn't heaved.
Huh?
It hasn't heaved. It's
just
separate.
separate.
We have an excellent road program at Public Works that Deals with a lot of cracks every year.
Yeah, not on tennis courts.
I know, that's a problem. That's right.
And 10 years is a long time. Normally, 5 years is about the limit that a surface will last on the tennis court.
For sure, yeah, from a distance they look okay, and then when you
Yeah,
get
I
on
know.
them to play, they're
Yeah, I don't
showing their
play-
age, for
I don't
sure.
play on them anymore.
You don't swing the bat on them anymore?
No, I don't swing the tennis racket either.
Just, like, this is another capital item that, like, I'd love to put it off another year, but it just seemed to me objectively as though it needed to be addressed, and I don't want anyone to get hurt.
Yeah, we just have a huge bump in 2028. This is part of it,
Yep.
very minor part, but
Yep.
still. I'm just wondering, Rachel, about your run rate for revenue. Like, how much revenue do you expect this year? I think you said you were going to be under budget.
We are going to be under what we projected. I'm anticipating, or I guess projecting now, around 290 to come in at.
So, what about your expenses? Are they about what was budgeted?
For 2025 or
For 2025, yeah.
For 2025.
Yeah.
I think we'll be under some expenses as well with our contract services. Mainly it's our after-school program. Our enrollment is down a little low, so we will not be expending that line.
So you have a ballpark estimate of what you'll be spending? Like the budget was 565.
I guess I would have to take a
Okay.
closer look at that,
But
which I can.
off the top of your mind, yeah, if you could check it out.
I know
what-
there's some like significant expenses that we just submitted that haven't been
Okay.
updated, so I guess I would want to see where those land to make that.
And then your expenses will actually be down under the proposed budget for the
For
following year.
Correct.
And you still expect revenue to be about 300?
I'm hopeful that
For
it will
next
be
year.
there, yes.
Okay. Are there any of your programs, contracted services that lose money?
No.
Heck yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I would just say if like monies were unlimited, which they're not, I'd ask Parks and Rec to do more programming downtown to help drive people downtown to support the downtown. But we're already doing quite a few programs downtown, and we just don't have the resources to do it.
It looks like it's working though. I mean, Halloween was packed. And I'm looking
Right.
forward to seeing what Frost Fest looks like.
We'd love to bring programs downtown, and the events are certainly a highlight for our department, and it seems as though for the community. It is an undertaking, though, to do, not only involving our other departments, which we truly appreciate all their support, couldn't do it, certainly do it without them, but just closing down parking spots, things to that nature, that's like a 2-hour prior to the event that we do. So certainly we would love to do more down there. And we did, the Great Bay Rotary gave us $1,000 this past summer to do some downtown summer entertainment. So we did a series of 3 different, well, one was a concert, one was more of a children's interactive with Mad Science, and then we did a movie in the park as part of Durham Day. And those averaged about 50 people at each of them. So not a huge turnout, but it was a nice turnout as well. And I think something that it can grow. We don't have to close down any parking spots or involve other departments for that. So we're hopeful to continue that in summer 2026.
Is there I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of combine some of the events a bit and maybe move some events that have traditionally been located in other parts of town to downtown to kind of go after both goals at once. So I don't know, maybe with the Easter celebration or, some other of the events that you've been sponsoring, is there a way to perhaps refocus some of those into the downtown area, as Halloween has been doing, or Frost Fest, and kind of try and combine some of those goals.
Sure, we can take a look at that. We have made those changes with the downtown trick or treat. It was something that used to take place. It wasn't called that, but it was a Halloween event that took place at Jackson's Landing. And then same thing with Durham Day was at Wagon Hill Farm. So we've brought those two events downtown, but it's something we can certainly look at with the other events that we offer. The egg hunt would be a little challenging. We have a lot of kids that come for it, and we actually outgrew the old landing park here. So now we're at the high school for it, and there's parking. There's a way to kind of corral the group, and so that's worked out well there. But there could be some definite advantages to looking at our other events moving downtown.
Yeah, I mean, it may take reformatting or some of the traditions, and I understand with the egg roll, but I think that it's an important priority for the town to kind of really try and get some increased energy downtown, and so
Sure.
whatever Parks and Recreation can be doing to
And
support
there
that.
could be some new events altogether that would be appropriate just to start up and have down there.
Well, thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Rachel, are we going to see Bill?
He is on Zoom, if you have any questions for him.
No, where is it in here, in the book?
That's very good.
The rink?
For the rink, that's,
Caramel.
It says Churchill Rink Fund.
Right before the library.
here he is.
Here's Bill.
How you doing, Bill?
Good, thank you.
How's the rink so far?
Very good, having a good year so far. It's been good. New Zamboni is amazing compared to the 30-year-old one, which I still use periodically, but it's nice to have a new one.
Do you let anyone else drive it?
Yeah, of course. They all love it too. It's much easier to drive than the old one. It's got a lot fewer, little idiosyncrasies than the old one did, the new one.
It'd be good, I'll just note, during the budget process earlier in the fall, we had a really good detailed conversation with Bill about the budget, and I think one question I had, Bill, is like, can you just comment on the concept of an expanded rink, improved rink, where that stands?
Sure. Well, where it stands is there is still professional work being done. I'm still waiting on the surveyor's final revised survey, which will include wetlands delineation, which we had done, and also accurate location of the building. And then once we get that survey from him, then it'll go back to our civil engineer so he can finalize his work for a proposed new layout of the parking and building and the playground and all that stuff. And then it will also go back to the architect so we can kind of finish his pretty pictures about what the building will look like on the site. He's used like Google Maps actually to plunk the new building onto something that looks just like our neighborhood, and it's pretty cool, and it'll be like almost an exact representation of what it would look like, so that the public and you folks can look at it and know exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, so it's a slow process, but we are making good progress, I feel.
Next question about that is the vision for this building. I mean, traditionally Churchill Rink has been kind of a self-sustaining separate fund. And is the vision for the new building would be to continue that, where Churchill Rink would be its entirely self-sustaining building in terms of its funding?
Yes, although I think it might become a little bit more complicated than that, but maybe for the better, in that, like, I feel like we obviously can't pay for this whole renovation and still pay all the debt service out of our operating budget. So once we have the building funded, whether it's donations bonds, whatever it is, then I think, yes, the building can operate on a self-sufficient basis. Where we're going to be moving the rec department in there too, if it goes the way we're trying to make it go, then we, in my opinion, could potentially, and it's like the first time I'm saying this in public, so don't hold me to it, but like I see an opportunity to potentially do what we've done with the rink for the rec department, with off-season programming for the big facility, which won't have ice in the summer. And I'm talking about pickleball and roller skating in particular, things like that. So I think there's potential that this will be a really good thing for the town of Durham when it comes to recreation in general. On top of that, one of the changes, I can't remember if I've mentioned this yet, but one of the last gyrations we made with the architect was adding a community room. We had to shift some things around down there and to make it work, and what ended up was like kind of a little hole in the middle out back where we could have this big nice room for whatever, but we're calling it the community room because it overlooks the cemetery. You can see Great Bay a little bit, but the cemetery is kind of first and foremost out back there. But it would be a good place for meetings or yoga or whatever. We think we have a really good plan, and I'm kind of excited to show it to you again once it's buffed out here.
And are there kind of two models potentially of a new building, one that's just kind of the rink expansion and one that includes Parks and Rec, or there's only the one vision which is including Parks and Rec?
Correct. I mean, it would be pretty easy to chop that off, to be quite honest with you. But no, the plan is to try and solve the rec department's issues with their inadequate facility at the courthouse, as well as, offer an amazing facility for the citizens of the Oyster River community.
Thank you.
Card, do you have?
Yeah, so the budget bill is to actually generate $233,000 in excess cash this year.
Are you looking at the fiscal year we're in right now?
No, next year.
Next year,
You have $150,000 going to the capital projects fund and $82,000 going to the fund balance.
right, and when I do my budget, I don't look at it with those numbers in there, to be honest with you. Like the 150, it always just confuses my brain and makes my head spin. So my budget ended up being like a net profit of $82,000 proposed for next year, which is expense of $330 and revenue of $412.
$330 and revenue of $412.
Yeah, $412,500 is what I have budgeted right now.
No, so that's consistent with the $82,000 transfer to fund balance, but where does $150,000 come from?
Well, that's for the potential replacement of our cooling tower, which would be a capital item paid for out of our fund balance. So that's just on the books movement of the money from our fund balance to our operating.
So you're taking 150 out of your fund balance and putting 82 in?
Potentially.
So you're actually down $68,000 in the fund balance?
I didn't just do that math in my head with you. If that's what it is, that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. There's also, like, depending on the progress we've made with the potential renovation, a good chance that the work I did to the cooling tower this past summer, which is working right now, it's leaking a little bit, but there's a good chance that we wouldn't need to do that 150 upgrade. Because ideally we would just do it as part of a renovation, not right before a renovation.
Right.
Right, but I think that this is in part the challenge with the rink expansion is that we have a good scenario now where we're able to generate enough revenue surplus each year to fund the reserve, which can then pay for the maintenance and upkeep of the facility. and it's sort of a virtuous cycle. It's not costing
Yeah.
the taxpayers anything. If we have to go beyond that with additional debt service, unless we can raise quite a lot of private funding or find new revenue from a new facility, then we start to go into the red, and the general fund has to subsidize. So the question is how we cross that boundary successfully and have a sustainable new facility going forward.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Thank you, Bill.
Thanks,
You're
Bill.
welcome, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
And is someone from MIS?
Yes, Luke Vincent is with us online.
Okay. Hi, Luke.
Let's forgive the background. I'm coming off fresh off of parent-teacher conferences. So 3 budgets, IT, DCAT, and GIS I'm willing to talk about. Rich Rain is here too to sign on the GIS budget as well.
You have comments?
Hi, Luke. It's Carden. I'm wondering if you can quantify any benefits we've ever gotten from having GIS.
Yeah, I saw your question earlier, Carden. It's an easy one for me, I think. The biggest benefit that we're seeing is the application development that the GIS department is doing. We're replacing what would be purchased applications with components of the GIS system, and I'll give you an example of that. Right now, Steve is working heavily with the workforce system inside the GIS system, which has become the de facto record management system for the...
Wait. Hey, slow down and talk to someone who is not an IT person.
Sorry. So we would have had to go out and purchase experience with the current GIS system. We are not going out to purchase, a multi-tens of thousands of dollar piece of software. There's no need for a separate record management system for the DPW because we are covering that under the GIS system. We plan to expand that as well. Already we're reaching into the code enforcement and / fire departments to work on a application for rental housing. And we will continue to expand those applications, such as a cemetery application, as well as an urban planning application that's coming online. So these would have been purchases or capital items that we would have had to put into the budget that we're not having to do.
Anything
I can
else?
add to that. I
Yeah,
can add to that,
Rich.
Carden, if I can. So maybe something more tangible. I think when you heard Neil talking about some of the applications that are being developed, and he mentioned that any one of the stewards on the property can go out, take a picture, get a latitude and longitude of a situation that might entail a tree across a trail or something like that, and then have that immediately be sent with a photo to Public Works for us to then create a work order. That's something that Steve has created using GIS, and it allows us to be really responsive to some of those issues that come up, and that's just one of those. We also, you may have noticed some of the dynamic speed table or speed boards that are out there. We had them on Mill Road, we had them on Faculty, had it on Packers Fall. All that data that we get, it doesn't become useful if it's just stored in an area that isn't easily accessible. We created a GIS application that allows us to have spatial information on a map that we can actually look at any one of those locations and get, the average speed, the number of cars that pass through that area. We have the 85th percentile speed, so we'll be talking a little bit more about that at the upcoming Traffic Safety Committee meeting. But those are the types of things that are really helpful for us to then be efficient when we deploy our forces. The work order management system that Luke just mentioned, it's enormously helpful. We started that when Steve came in about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just part of the Esri suite that allowed us to, anytime we had paper files, and those paper files were in file cabinets that really didn't give us any ability to look at trending. And now we have all that information available on a map that we can see various issues and help us make some determinations on how we strategically program repairs of roadways, any types of hotspots where we have some, tree incidents, water main breaks, all those types of things. So those are just a few things that I can mention. There's probably a dozen or 20 more items that we use, and then he also works for Steve works with Dave Emanuel and the fire department and the police department, and comes up with different ways that they can be efficient with their time.
Yeah, I'm just always curious about the fact that we get all these new systems and, computer systems, GIS, all this, that are supposed to help with our efficiency, but costs keep going up faster than inflation. And I can't quite find those efficiencies after we buy it and do it. I mean, for instance, I was a trail steward for years, and when we found something on trail, we called up and told people. And okay, now you get a picture and you know very precisely where it is, but how much of a benefit is that? I'm not sure. So I just want to say the budgets keep going up, the expenses keep going up. We hear about the great savings we're going to have. I would hate to see what the budgets were if we didn't have these great savings, which of course maybe is another way to look at it. But go ahead.
My question is for Rich. Is there any automated holdover or input for emergency operations center reporting for the state during hurricanes, nor'easters, snowstorms? Does that tie into GIS at all?
There is. There's an E911, and it allows us to, and Dave Emanuel's probably more expert in this area, and probably Luke is also, but there is this platform that we all have access to from an emergency response team when they do activate that. And it can help us look at different types of road closures or resource availability. And we don't have a GIS tie-in to date, but I know Steve has talked with them and is trying to integrate both of the different platforms, which isn't easy. But yes, that's helpful. It's kind of, in my mind, it's kind of a standalone. And when you have an event, you have login credentials to be able to access that and see some of the updates. There's weather information on there. There's a lot of information that we can pull off. And we also report into that system of updates about the town of Durham. It's helpful to see what other towns are experiencing, especially if we have storms coming from the western part of the state moving toward the seacoast. We can kind of see what they're encountering.
Certainly, I think a common operational picture of the whatever hazards or incidents are within the roadways, not just of Durham, but in the surrounding area, is of a utility to not only the residents of Durham, but to our first responders.
Without a doubt, yeah.
I think, I think there was something mentioned, I don't know if it was the last budget meeting, but I think there was also some streamlining in Audrey's department and her use of.
Yes.
You're supposed to be.
And I can't remember exactly how to describe it, but she was able to issue the notices of findings or something in a way that cut time down.
Yes, Steve has worked with Audrey as well. He's really worked with every department head from Michael, working with different types of updates to zoning maps, and Audrey is working with him to develop some inspection tools. There's a tool in the Esri suite called Survey 123, and it allows you to have different programming and pre-programmed questions and photos that allow you to track this information. So yeah, he's worked with Audrey quite a bit.
You also can go in, I use it, I've used it to, study when we were looking at the different districts in terms of, what areas are the RA district and the RB and the RC. When we were talking about, should we do multi-housing in Churchill? Okay, what's Churchill really look like? And the GIS will colorize that particular area. You can understand what's in that area, what structures, and so it's actually really good for a lot of the things that it does from a zoning perspective.
Yeah, we made a decision early on when Steve was hired about 4 years ago, maybe 5, close to 5 now, And we made a decision that we didn't want to have, and I think, Cardin, to your point, you know, there's a lot of towns who claim to have a GIS department, but they don't really use it to its full kind of ability, and it's more of a glorified map makers. We actually try to use this as a tool to make things more efficient and also be more responsive, you know, to the community when questions come up. So Steve does all the tax map updates with Darcy. So there's a lot of things that GIS touches that you might not think it's actually involved in.
And running off of Rich's comment there, the key to that is the application development side of things. A lot of towns focus on making pretty maps, but not using that data to actually feed into actual applications for staff. And that's the difference that we're making in Durham, is that all of that data is feeding into actual applications. For example, I know Rich was talking a little bit about workforce, but they also use it for answering all the DigSafe responses. So anytime there's a DigSafe response, it comes as a ticket under workforce system. And that was a very manual process before that's been automated to a large degree.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Salik, I do have two questions. I mean, they're looking at the 2022 to the 2026 budget. Software support and maintenance agreements in 2022 was $122,000. And for 2026, it's $229,000. So we're almost doubling that in the last 4 years, which is a pretty steep increase. And I know it's 6% from last year to this year, but could you walk us through a little bit why we've almost doubled the cost since 2022?
So one aspect of that is the Office 365 licensing. We were able to combine a bunch of independent applications, which was our separate email system, our AV, or what it's more called EDR today, and various applications inside of Office that we were using. So standard licensing, for example, for the Office product, we were able to combine those all together into a subscription price. That price was included in the subsequent years, but wasn't in that previous one, which was a large chunk of that. I think it was like on the order of $75,000 in. And then in addition to that, we've also seen significant increases year after year in our support costs for our aging products. So Unismart in particular has gone up consistently year after year after year. We do not anticipate those going down. Matter of fact, as those products age, we see a reduction in support staff, which naturally drives the cost up of that support staff. So we are anticipating to continue to see those increases inside the support products, the products that we support, excuse me. And we are making efforts, and I think I highlighted in this year's budget letter, to move away from that system, to move to a new system at this point, because we are now at plus 20 years in that enterprise resource planning product, and it is showing its age for sure. So a reset of that will bring that support cost down as well. But we've had some both new purchases inside there and increases year over year.
And then similarly, when we look at the wages, full-time wages from 2022, that was $101,000, and we're looking at $217,000 for next year. So again, that's over a doubling, this time more than double in the last 4 years. Has there been a personnel shift at all since 2022?
Yes, we added one new staff member, an assistant IT director, that works as kind of what was sold at the time as a kind of a getting hit by a bus incident. So we wouldn't lose institutional knowledge should the primary person leave. That was the main goal of that position, but the position also serves as a full-time employee for the town. So we are working with that person day in, day out to fulfill the help desk needs, the security needs, the one-off calls that we get.
And I'll just note, in addition to the 2 full-time staff, we have like a volunteer extraordinaire who donates huge amounts of time. It's Jay Goose. And when he decides to step away, that's going to create a void for us to keep up with the demands on this department.
Luke, do you feel okay about cybersecurity?
I don't think anyone in this day and age can feel okay about it, but I think we have a pretty good start to our program in Durham. We have 4 new policies that are coming online this year that were a direct result of our financial audit years. And we're working with outside groups and our insurer to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep the program running with the limited budget that we have.
Thanks.
Any other comments? MIS? Thank you, Luke.
Okay.
And thank you, Rich. Next, we have the business office. Gail Jablonski.
I have nothing. Any questions?
I think we're extending your contract a couple of years.
Negative.
You're gonna come back and volunteer your
Right,
20 hours a week, though, right?
Yeah, definitely, yes. You are on my volunteer list, yes.
Hold your breath, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
So my budget is pretty much status quo. We have 4 employees.
What page are you, Gail?
I do not know.
29.
Thank you.
Could you comment on, we've been sort of using an old program for our budgets and finances.
Yes.
What's the status of an upgrade there? We want to talk about that.
Dina Goslin, who's our staff accountant, is now taking on the responsibility of looking into new software programs. She's working with Luke. She's meeting with all the departments to see what the needs are and what we might be able to come up with. So we're hoping for 2027, we'll have a proposal for a new software program. It'll then probably take a year to 2 to implement, but we are hoping to do something. As Luke said, the program we have now came on in 2006, so it's almost 20 years old. They stopped doing upgrades to it maybe 10 years ago, and currently there is one employee at the company who is a guru on the program, and if he goes on vacation and we have a problem, it's a problem because nobody else really knows how to run the program like he does. So as much as we're used to the program, we like it, it is old and there are many things that we're hoping the new programs can do for us.
Other than potential retirement, there's no staffing change envisioned. It's as is.
Yeah, he said potential.
Yeah.
And why is health and dental up so much? Same thing?
Yes, just based on employees and the cost, yeah.
It's crazy how much it's gone up.
It is crazy.
And that's part of the challenge is, we're trying to meet inflation, but our cost structure is increasing, whether it's tech or, insurance, it's outpacing inflation.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge.
Yeah. And I have one of my employees on her husband's insurance, he's retiring, so she's coming onto the town. So it went from a buyout to a plan.
No, it's one of the risks you take when you make a new position. Who knows what the health and dental plan is going to be, and it's going to go up more rapidly than inflation.
It seems that the contribution and the health care increase is way more than the base salary is going up. I mean, it seems like health insurance is going up at a 15% rate, and we're talking about 3% raise, rates for salary. So for an overall increase of way more than 3%, that's not easy to figure out the contributions of each.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the things I hope that GIS and IT, help prevent having to hire more and more staff for a lot of things. So
AI is gonna be able to do this.
It doesn't seem to work.
half these positions are gone in 2 years.
That's why I'm getting out now.
If they could only get rid of all those invasives we
It
haven't
doesn't.
made.
It doesn't
Wait
work
a
that
sec,
way.
Al.
So close.
What are the 5 main things that are in this budget that shouldn't be there?
They're not going there. Your department isn't here.
I assume that's it then for, for the business office?
That was the fastest one so far.
Fastest one so far.
Good to know your clout.
And we have the library group
Hi.
here.
How are you?
Good.
Thanks for
Hi,
having us.
Cheryl.
I'm here with my whole squad. This is Robin Glasser. She's the chair of our Board of Trustees and Assistant Director, Audra Lewis. We're here to answer your questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for the library?
Someone help me with the
Or com-
pages.
Or comments?
It's all in the back.
216.
219.
216, 219?
Both of them.
I think these things should have had a table of contents.
Yeah,
I mean, that one at the
Or
front?
some nicely
one of
labeled
these years
tabs.
they're going to put that in. Okay, so you were here, can I go? So you were here in the beginning, you know, we have a very tough budget. So we're looking for savings anywhere we can find them. So in the library, I saw you actually get the library cleaned 5 days per week, which is at least 14 days earlier than I do with mine. And it's, the run rate is 22,000. You're going up to, I can't remember, 24,000, 25,000. But can we just clean 4 days a week and save $4,000?
So, well, sure we could, but we had 69,000 visits to the library last year, and the library gets a lot of use, and people coming in and out. I believe that the increase is due to they actually want them to do more things in the library. Is that correct? Just to kind of just keep the library clean for our patrons.
I know, but this is it's a very difficult year, and so we're looking for ways that maybe we can save money that wouldn't be as noticed by the taxpayers as, say, you know, firing someone or something like that. So it just seems like if we could save $4,000 to have one less cleaning a week when it's getting cleaned 4 days a week, it would be worthwhile. You also have a maintenance thing that I think you could.
Carden, I just need to interrupt
Yeah.
you. Some of this
Yeah.
stuff is contracted through DPW, through their budget. So we are flexible and certainly are willing to make, to help and be flexible that way. If that means we have to empty the trash 1 day a week, we're certainly willing to do that. But that, you'd have to probably address that with
Okay.
retraining.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's the maintenance and the cleaning. Those were the only two things I saw. So.
Yeah, I guess it's Rich speaking, if I could. Garden, I think the $26,000 that we have in there for cleaning right now,
Yeah.
it's slightly up from the current year, but it's in line with what we've been paying. It's a new cleaner. He's been there for about a year now. He's doing a much better job than the previous cleaner. Have some other, I think Cheryl just mentioned there's a couple other things in there, waxing of the floors as well as doing some deep cleaning of the floors as well. We might have some flexibility on that. We can track that to see, if it's needed, at the time that we're planning on doing it. But it does get a lot of use, and we found that the 5 days per week is needed.
And I'd just say, like, at this building, which gets less use than the library, there are times where, someone urinates on the seat, there's like, it gets gross, like, so, because we're dealing with not just staff, but the public
the
coming in,
public.
and
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say you don't want to cut down cleaning of urine.
Can I quote you?
We're not yet in the winter season, but, you salt, sand,
Yeah.
everything gets tracked in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gets pretty
I like this
consistently,
building.
yeah.
Who has their house cleaned 5 days a week?
Yeah, but
Who has-
you're
I have a
living
newborn
with
running
it.
around, so-
That's different. But if you've ever had to deal with contracted cleaning services and the stories that they have to tell you about your facilities and what happens to them, specifically in the public bathrooms,
Public,
it's
yeah.
horrific. It is literally horrific. The public, you'd think, would be a little better than it is, and it's really crazy.
And none of us have
59,000?
59,000 people going to our house
I had to
every
close
year
because the
either.
fruit flies come.
It's all the compost problem they're dealing with. Anyway.
I think we've all been in
And to be
nasty
fair,
bathrooms, so it's not like. the other way
We have
around.
the library cleaned 5 days a week, but we still do our fair share of cleaning and also plunging and
Yes,
things of
if
that
something
nature, so.
happens during a day, it's one of us who takes care
And
of
we
it.
have
We're
small
not calling
children
DPW, we're
running
just
all
taking care of
over.
it.
Germy children, all small children are germy, so, you know. I'm not going to the library if you go down to that.
And I would just say, a word of caution, we have a very advanced building system, kind of HVAC over there. And, if you look at the line item, it's not in the library budget, it's in the public works budget under 81251. We have like a $5,000 ask for FY '26, and it's kind of in line with other previous fiscal years. And, it's a multi-million-dollar facility with a very lean maintenance budget, and that takes into account all the different things that happen with the HVAC system, any type of issues that come up with motors and pumps and, urinals and valves and all those sorts of things. So we try to be, cognizant of the cost, but it's a complex building with a lot of square footage to maintain, and we have a pretty lean maintenance budget.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
And DPW takes great care of the building, by the way, so thank you, Rich.
Any other comments, questions about the library?
Yeah, just, in my review, there just was like nothing here to pick at, like it was just business as usual, and I think they're doing a very good job, really meeting needs. So, I was impressed.
Great, nothing else?
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
There's one other thing, maybe you could focus on revenue, getting revenue.
How would you like us to do that?
Well, you've sent out the thing, I've only gotten one thing, I think, this year, and I think you could, do maybe 3 or something like that, mailings. And I'm also confused when they send it to I could send it to the library, or I could send it to there's something else.
The Friends.
The Friends, yeah, it doesn't matter.
We prefer it, the mailing you just received was the Board of Trustees annual appeal, and we would prefer that come through the trustees, because we in turn commit $20,000 a year to our operating budget. And we base that $20,000 on what we bring in through the annual appeal, and last year it was $23,000 and change, so this year we're putting $20,000 into the budget. And we also stand ready with the annual appeal money that we've built up over the years to take care of any unanticipated expenses that come along during the year, so that we don't have to come back and ask the town for additional funds.
What if it's sent right to the library?
So I saw your note today, by the way. I just opened the envelope. Yep. And so the difference is that your question was whether or not the money all goes to the same place, and it does. The trustees have a commitment to the town operating budget that they would like to fulfill, and the Friends supply like our icing on the cake items, things that we wouldn't be able to afford otherwise.
Okay, so it's either the trustees or the Friends?
Or the Friends,
Okay.
right.
And the trustees have a commitment?
Correct.
Right, correct.
Okay, thanks. And how often do the Friends ask for money?
They generate money through, they used to do a significant membership drive, and that's sort of dwindled over the years, but the bulk of their donations to the library comes from money that they collect from book sales. They have a book,
So like
like a
the
book
book sale
sale.
the other day?
Yep. And they actually sell cookies at the library that are very popular.
Yes.
And generate
They're
quite a bit
very
of,
good,
I know,
too.
yeah.
Okay.
Those are primary sources,
Yep.
so. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It was an amazing book sale, by the way.
Oh.
What you had
Yeah,
there.
I had a lot of good stuff.
Right. All right, is Rich, you still online? And we have time for Rich? I think we do, we're moving forward.
Yes, I am here, thanks.
Public Works. Go ahead.
Rich, I was looking at the cleaning services for Wagon Hill Farm for 2026, to be the first year of spending more than $19,000 on cleaning services there. And I'm wondering if does that need to start on January 1st, or can we delay and maybe save some money on those cleaning services? Because it's the same amount that's set aside for, I think, Public Works. It's the same amount. So I just didn't know if there was a way to delay that start of the cleaning services for Wagon Hill.
Yeah, I think it really is, it's flexible. I guess to answer your question, we do have some flexibility because it really depends on when we kind of roll out that, the opening of that first exhibit, and also how we utilize the caretaker, within that whole care of the building itself. So there is a little bit of flexibility there. We kind of assumed that was going to be, we now have, four full bathrooms. We have, a lot of the exhibit space, the area in the exhibit space itself. So it's a pretty significant amount of square footage that they will be cleaning. But there is some flexibility in that first year, and maybe even, once we get a bit of a track record, years beyond that.
Okay, I just didn't know if we needed this, if we could prorate it based on when things get running. But if the restrooms are open on January 1st, obviously you're going to need care there too.
Well, and I think that's something we need to talk a little bit about is
Right.
how do we want to use those 4 restrooms in the L? Do we want them open to the public all the time, or only when we have an event in the Bickford Chesley house? So, or in the barn. So, and that has a big impact on the cost. What we spec'd it out for is essentially ongoing cleaning services for a year.
Okay.
And they probably will be open, they'd be available to be open January 1, but I'm not sure what our goal is there. That was an undefined area.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was a savings there because we wouldn't actually be full on, but it sounds like it might be, or whatever, you figure that out.
I think we modeled the worst case scenario with, opening January 1st, having, 5 days a week cleaning services, both bathrooms and the main building itself, and the barn. And there's some flexibility there.
I'll just bring this up in the context of this conversation. Is it clear what the building will be used for besides a caretaker? And who is going to be programming it, and whether there'll be any revenue
Yes.
enhancements or not?
Well, so the caretaker will be in the upstairs apartment, and so historically, we rented to a police officer who was either a town employee or more frequently a UNH employee. And there was a benefit to having a police car parked up there. It really helped keep things under wraps, which was great. And we also asked the officer to open the gate in the morning and close it in the evening. And for many years, though, we've not opened and closed the gate. So some of the employment laws have changed. So our initial thought was we could ask this the quote-unquote caretaker, who we rent the apartment to at perhaps a reduced market rate, to undertake work in maintaining the bathrooms and organizing things in the display rooms, like opening and closing doors. But what we've learned is that to do that, we need to essentially hire that person as a part-time employee and pay them an hourly rate. So the rules have changed around it. So we have a lead that Strawberry Bank has such an arrangement, and we're connecting with them to get a sense of what their lease looks like, et cetera. But another model would be to simply come up with what a workforce housing rate would be. It's probably going to be $1,600, $1,700 a month, potentially. And then to charge that to see if any town employees are interested in living there. And then we provide housing to the workforce, and the proceeds, $20,000 a year plus or minus, can help to offset the cost of cleaning bathrooms if they're open year-round, or other elements of the property. But we just don't have that part of it defined. Now, in terms of the space on the first level, we'll have some rooms that are display spaces to show history of Durham, and those would be changing. Carolyn Singer is pulling together a group that will need to more concretely form, but they would be in charge of essentially identifying, sort of scheduling who will be in those rooms, making sure they're meeting our standards, coming up with a schedule to swap them in and out. We'd also, and we would coordinate whatever we're displaying with the non-peak demand times at the property. So we're not anticipating it's going to create an overload of use at the property. And then we'll also have some space that's available for public meeting space. So if we wanted to have a committee meeting there, or if some group wanted to pay to use a room for an event, we could make that available as well. And then potentially with the 3-season barn, there'd be the opportunity to do things like a wedding there, but we don't allow alcohol. So that tends to be a killjoy for people who want to do something with a wedding. But it's a possibility. Right now, we allow people to use the grounds at Wagon Hill Farm, but it's very low risk or low lift on the town's part. We're just making sure they know where to be, what not to do. They go out and do the thing. They provide a deposit. As long as they don't create any damage, they get the deposit back. But there's nothing to stop somebody from just waltzing on the property and having a little ceremony, and we'd never know they were there. So we try to keep the cost really reasonable so people feel comfortable talking to us, and we can make sure it's happening at a good time. But if we're bringing someone inside to the barn, I think then there's a real opportunity to charge for that space. Because they just wouldn't have access otherwise. So,
we did 3 wedding ceremonies for $8,000. And we could do that in part because we did the one in the US for $5,000 by going to the Camp YMCA in Kensington, or Kingston. I think it's in Kingston. And you could use the camp, and you would hire a Kingston police officer in order to have alcohol on the camp premise. And then the officer was there, and that's the way that they, instead of having a liquor license, they could have alcohol on the premises. Is that a model that Durham has looked at all or talked to other towns about in terms of a way to allow alcohol on town properties for rental events?
we haven't. We've just taken the flat position that it's not allowed. The ordinance doesn't allow it on town property, so it's just a flat no, but we could revisit it. We absolutely, and with a space, we could do it. Like right now, it's the vows that are happening at Wagon Hill Farm, and then they go somewhere else for the celebration. They're not doing the celebration at Wagon Hill Farm.
Odihorn Point has that model, though.
I mean, it still kept it extremely affordable.
You hire an officer if you want to have.
I think we could really bring money in if we did that. I mean, we need to think outside the box with that property compared to, obviously, it hasn't been visit ready, and I mean, you put a lot of money into it, and it could be a way that one, could pay for itself in terms of the cleaning, in terms of all these other things that are going to cost money. And we need to find a way that it can support itself, and maybe even put a little in our coffers. It's a beautiful property, and people that are out looking for their wedding venue, if you show that you're there, they will come.
Yeah, I think the Hamilton Smith Chapel is not advertised either as a space.
And you could get more money for that, because I think you're not charging anything really much
Well,
for
in
it,
addition
are
to
you?
the fact that you've got a space, but you've got something that is a memorable cornerstone of their own.
Exactly. It's not just, going to the rec
It's not
center
any
and having a
church or
community
something.
center.
It's not any
It's
spot in the field.
It's visual.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the barn isn't that large, but you so you've seen when people have weddings at homes and things, they do they do have tent rentals and chairs and tables and all that sort of stuff. So it would be pretty straightforward for us to kind of put together the contacts in a package to be able to refer people to the various vendors to make those arrangements, and that way those vendors are familiar with our requirements as well.
Yep.
I'm smiling at the thought of the reaction of some people in Durham to a big tent out there.
They'll get over it.
That's right.
Well, I would request maybe that Gail put together an income statement for this house for next year. Like, what are the expenses? What do we expect for the revenue? We don't want a big anchor to windward if, it's going to cost a lot of money and we're not going to get anything out of it. It already costs a lot of money, but
Right.
on an ongoing basis.
Well, and one question is, what are your thoughts about workforce housing versus market rate housing? Because I'm not sure the best approach. I was thinking workforce because we've been talking about that, and it's a way to activate it on a town property, but it won't bring in as much revenue either. So
I think the caretaker requirement is going to be the thing that really deters that.
I also,
I don't think there's going to be a caretaker requirement.
Right? You just said the
Can't.
hourly wage, we're not going to pay someone 24 hours a day.
Well, I'm understanding there is still an expectation for some level of presence.
Yes, we'll have to work that out, but yes. But I think opening a gate, closing a gate is one thing. Asking them to walk the grounds a few times a week, that's something else. If we're asking them to clean bathrooms and, do more, it then clearly becomes a hourly position.
Todd, have you thought through whether or not they can have children, how many children they can have?
Sublet.
Can they put swing sets outside? I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions here that are tricky.
How many, I don't know, I can't remember, how much is a square foot of the living quarters?
It's a nice size apartment. I don't have it with me right now,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm
It's
just
upstairs.
curious.
It's a couple bedrooms with full kitchen, 2 bathrooms. It's a nice size, apartment. Yeah. And Carden, I will say, before you came back on the council, when this was all being discussed as part of the budget last year, there was a pro forma put together that kind of called all the costs and some estimates for projected revenues, so I can get a copy of that to you.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
rough, though.
Sure.
But it's a significant annual expense. And if you subtract out, the expense of the cost of the rent, we're still talking at least $40,000 a year for maybe a number of things at Wagon Hill Farm, but that's Wagon Hill total in here is $58,410,000. So
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at page 121. Starting on page 120 is Wagon Hill.
Well,
The expense for electricity.
Okay.
You go from 800 to 4,000.
Right.
Things like that.
some of it though,
add
like
up.
the wages are just an allocation of overall public works wages
Sure.
across all our properties,
Sure.
so.
Right. That hasn't changed much.
And the $20,000 for cleaning. In other words, any revenue we could bring in would help
Yeah.
pick off those
The other
pieces.
contract, sorry.
And is security provided by DPW or police department for Wagon Hill?
We have an alarm.
Yeah, we have an alarm system there, both fire and burglar.
And that's under Public
yeah.
Works, and then
Yeah,
police would respond if there's a concern.
Yeah. And in that alarm, whether that alarm is a camera or some other thing, the DPW takes first responsibility on that?
right. It goes to a central station, American Alarm, and then there's a number of people on that call list, including myself. And when
Yeah.
those calls come through, if the first person doesn't answer it, it goes to the second from the central station, and then they'll then contact PD or Stratford Regional Dispatch, and then it would be handled by the PD.
So that would be typical for any town-owned building, actually, that process.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Just like the library has alarm system monitoring, it's the same thing.
Okay.
Me again?
Yes.
Shifting to curbside collection, because we know there's potential for change there. And I guess I was not sure when I was looking at the budgets on page 134 about, fees for curbside, and we have, vehicle maintenance, but if it's not our vehicles, then we're not looking at spending $10,000 on it. Or is this based on
Right.
the first 6 months, and then the second 6 months we're switching? And
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure it was all laid out that way.
It was, thanks Sally for that question. It was really kind of a difficult thing to develop this budget because we wanted to move forward in the direction of the contracted services for collection of both solid waste and recycling, but we didn't want to drop the full-time equivalents in the budget at the same time. So what we did was take an incremental cost. So we netted everything out and we said, okay, the budget that we have an estimate now we put out a specification and got an estimate from both Waste Management and Casella Waste, and those are really the only two entities that would be capable of doing curbside collection, in Durham. There's other solid waste haulers in the area, but those haulers like Wind Waste or Republic, they mostly do front-end loader commercial type of work. So we took the cost of the first estimate or the first quote, I should say, that we received, and we netted that out against what the cost would be, to keep our costs in there for the full-time equivalents, and put the incremental cost in both the curbside collection the curbside collection line item, and we did the same thing on the recycling, because they'd be doing both recycling collection and curbside collection. And we had an incremental cost above what we currently were doing of just around $70,000, and this was starting in July, so 6 months worth of collection. We then received a second quote from Casella, and it was considerably less than Waste Management, to the tune of about just over $90,000. So in fact, going with this other collection option with Casella, it would be less costly than what you currently see in the budget that's presented, and we could make those adjustments and decrease the budget by a certain amount. Now, it won't be the full 90,000, because we do see over the last several months since this budget was developed, there have been other cost increases just market-wide. We're seeing significant downturn in the value of recyclables, and we're seeing that has jumped up about $20 per ton for both our mixed recyclables as well as the fiber, the cardboard and the mixed paper. So there'll be some offset from that, but overall it's less expensive for the collection of our curbside, collection of trash and recyclables, using this contract ops option with Casella Waste.
So I guess my question is, like, if you look at diesel fuel, we're anticipating spending $2,000 more next year than we are this year, but for half the year we won't be using our trucks. So I'm wondering,
right.
It's the same for tipping fees, unless we're paying the tipping fees on top and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so let me explain that. So if you see the $23,200 in diesel fuel under curbside, and then you look at contracted services of $46,040. That $46,040 doesn't actually represent the true cost of the contract that we received, because we'd be billing some of that contract to the diesel fuel that we would no longer need. But because we were kind of in flux and didn't we didn't, at that point when we're developing the budget, we didn't know if the town council would support this contract ops recommendation. We didn't change the FTEs. We only included the net change on the contract ops in there. So you would see. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that helps. Thank you. Keep going.
No, I was just going to say. So you'll see, that if we went to contract operations, we would bill those contract services, that line item, which would be the 84236. We would bill that, and there would be an overrun on that, but there would be an underrun on the diesel fuel, as well as the maintenance of curbside collection vehicles and all those things. But there is going to be some activity for the first 6 months of the year on those line items, because we're still maintaining our own trucks and our own other, diesel fuel types of expenditures.
Do you anticipate in those first 6 months that our trucks will be able to fulfill the curbside pickup, or do you think you're going to need to rent? And do we have any place in here for renting a truck or two?
Yeah, we've already made arrangements, and in fact, we get a couple options. We're always contingency planning with these vehicles because they're in such poor shape, and we're trying to be, diligent about not investing in these trucks because we are either going to go one direction, which is purchase, 2 new automated side loaders, or the other direction, which would be go with these contract ops option. But there's certain things that we have to invest in just to keep them on the road and safe. So I think that, that's one option, try to just keep the fleet that we have together. We also have talked to various vendors, including Casella, and we have an hourly rate for the use of a truck with a driver and a laborer, or just a driver. And then we also, I made some calls to a couple truck rental companies. Premier Trucks is one, that they gave us a monthly rate for the rental of a truck. So we have a couple options that we can work depending on how our fleet holds up.
And do you feel like the budget covers that that need?
I think the budget covers that, as well as the vacancies that we have. And that's one of the big issues that's driving this decision too. We have a vacancy in solid waste that we haven't been able to fill. We have issues with people out on workers' compensation injuries that really puts us in a tough spot. And then we have some highway vacancies, highway division vacancies that were typically, when we have a vacancy in solid waste, or a person's on vacation or sick, we would we'd pivot and have one of the highway division folks fill in. But we're really low on that ability to do that right now at the vacancies. So it became a real problem for us. So because of those vacancies, it provides us some budget latitude.
So then again, do you anticipate then needing to ask the town council for a vote before January 1st, or at some point to say, yes, we'd like to go with commercial pickup?
Well, I think that's the town manager's recommendation in the budget proposal that he made, and I'm kind of viewing this that if we're talking about it tonight, the budget's been presented that way. If the budget is approved as it's presented, that would be the direction that we would go with contract operations.
And I guess the question is, does the town council need to approve anything separate from the budget in terms of going with
We
curbside?
would bring you a contract from Casella to approve. But I guess if any of you have opposition to moving in this contract out direction, it'd be helpful to know now. And if I don't hear a huge concern, then what we'll do is take the information from the Casella bid, which we just got last week, like it's breaking news, and we'll go through and reformat the line items to show what the savings are and do a better job at aligning costs with lines where we have a clear direction. But when Rich was developing this, he didn't know if in fact there'd be support to contract out, because in the past, Durham kind of felt we should do it in-house because we felt we could do it better, more cost effectively, the staff would know the public, etc. But I'm more focused on cost and the ability of Durham to attract staff to actually do the work, and that's become a real problem.
I sure wish Casella weren't
definitely
such an
would
evil
support
company in terms of environmental justice, but.
And the toters, is that if you go third party, you're still doing the toter program?
We're still doing the toter program. That's why we've held off on that, because the toter program, as we had it designed originally, was 2 64-gallon carts, and there was going to be a conversion to single stream, and the single stream was going to be picked up weekly. The vendors that we've talked to have all encouraged us, based on, the information that they had and the cost competitiveness, to go every other week with single stream recycling and have a 96-gallon recycling container to allow for more of the larger bulky material to be stored in there. So that's why we've held off, but that was something that the council approved at a couple months ago to award a contract for toter, but we've kind of held until we knew which direction we were going.
All this would also mean not moving ahead with the EV trash truck we'd spec'd out and
Right.
waste offered CNG trucks where Casella does not, they're diesel, so.
And just to confirm, so, I mean, we would no longer see the toter program. We would have a modification of the toter program.
You would see it.
We would get rid of our own garbage trucks so that we would still have a maintenance person on staff for the other DPW vehicles, though, and we would be eliminating some positions in DPW by going with contracted services.
Well.
Right.
Okay.
We would eliminate the positions in DPW, but we have vacant positions right now
So
that
we
we
just
would give
have to
those.
Right.
Give those folks an opportunity to, if they were qualified, to move into those positions as well. And we would also have this transfer station open on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and potentially even another day. And right now, we only have 3 people at the transfer station, so we would retain 2 at the transfer station, and 1 person would move into one of those vacant highway positions potentially. So there would be a decrease of 2 people in that division.
Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you also told me that if individuals did not feel like they could do the highway position jobs, that you were going to coordinate a warm handover with a contracting company to potentially bring them on, so they would not work for Durham and we would not be paying them, but they would not be out of a job.
That's exactly right. In fact, we had conversations with both Waste Management and Casella along those lines, and they all indicated that they would be willing to do that.
And I guess the only other thing I would add in is this, not that there's any rush, but the solid waste ordinance that you all worked on so hard may have some sections that no longer will apply or need to be reworded with a commercial contract.
Right, we looked at that, Sally, and,
Yeah.
and it aligns pretty well.
Good, okay.
There's really nothing so specific as far as collection and set out and timing and all those things. There isn't anything that we would have to rush to change if we went with the contract option,
Nice, that'd be great, good, good.
It just makes sense, in my opinion.
Any other questions or comments for Public Works?
I just want to give my general favor of support for the consolidation of waste management, solid waste under Casella. I believe you were estimating around $11,000 annual cut, in addition to a reduction in uncertainty of increasing personnel costs. I think this is one of the wins. It's an easy enough one in a hard budget year.
Plus, we don't have to do a capital invest, which is a real positive.
Yeah.
And nobody can blame us for not doing bulk pickup day.
I just wonder in the future, once you sell your trucks and get all set up for the other place and they come in and say, hey, it goes up 30% our cost, then what do you do? Is there any way to prevent that?
We own the toters. The toters are ours. So at any time we decided to either go after another, say, 5 years from now, we decided to bring it back in. I don't see why we would. I think the collection service is going to be, very, very good. And I think the costs are going to increase year over year, but probably less so than what our costs are. So I think we could, change and bring it back in-house if we wanted to do that, but we would have capital costs associated with the purchase of the trucks. But the toters are ours, we own those.
Are we a little bit at risk though, because you said there's only 2 companies who could actually do this? So, if one comes in and they raise the price, 30%, something like that, and we only have that other guy to go to, and, there's such a thing as, I think it's called a monopsony, where they just, collude to some extent and don't come in? I mean, are there really only two competitors in this business?
There really are. We have a spreadsheet that I could send over to you with, probably 20 or 30 towns listed on there that kind of gives an indication of how they collect their solid waste. And the names that I'm talking about tonight are the names that are on there for solid waste contract operations collection. We do have, we're proposing a 5-year contract. And there is language in there what the year-over-year increase is. And I think it's fair. It's a CPI increase related to water, sewer, and trash. It's a separate line item outside of the typical CPI. And we have a ceiling of 6%. I'm sorry, a ceiling of 5% negotiated with a floor of 3%. So I think our exposure is really limited.
Thank you.
Good contract for us.
I'm just looking at the personnel, counts on page 9, and I do see we have 4.2 sanitation folks currently. You said that it would drop down to 2.
I'm sorry, you're right, and the point 2 is a part-time individual, a UNH student that helps us out. Brendan, he's there on Saturdays when we're open to help out. So you're right, but we are 2 of the full-time FTEs are what we're dropping.
Okay, so we would, so what would the other 2 that are retained, what would they be doing as sanitation maintenance folks?
So we still are going to be doing, I'm sorry?
Just go ahead.
Oh, okay, so we're still going to have the transfer station responsibility, so we'll be open Tuesday through Saturday. We're still going to be running the roll-off. We still have to make coordination with vendors for all the different other materials that we aren't collecting. So the bulky waste that we collect, the C&D we collect, all these other materials that we do collect are still going to take a significant effort. It's just going to be the curbside collection portion that we're no longer going to be responsible for with our own operations.
And with the contracted services, those trucks would be headed directly, though, to the landfill, would not need to go through the transfer station. So presumably there would be some lessened responsibilities at the transfer station as well, though.
Yeah, our trucks don't go to the transfer station right now. They go directly to turnkey. And that would be the same situation that we would have those disposal, the disposal option would be going directly to the final disposal location, unless there was some unusual circumstance where they needed to dump off, a load of recycling or solid waste at our facility. But the rule would be, delivered to the transfer to the landfill or to the recycling facility.
Thanks.
So the company will be responsible for the tipping fees, the town will be responsible, no?
Other way, the town will be responsible still for the tipping fees at the
and for
landfill.
the new $3.50 every ton, yep.
Exactly.
Okay.
So just as a comment, you talked about increasing the amount of days the transfer station would be open. I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, it's just adding more monitoring, and it's, I looked around at other towns and it didn't seem very many of them were available more than that, maybe different days, but it just seems like it's just another thing where we're having to manage something that isn't necessarily, a high priority, I would think, even in the community.
Yeah.
Just as a observation.
Yeah, this is a year where we cannot be adding services.
No.
It's just out.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that would add additional costs. We would, we'd have people up there,
Yeah,
anyway.
but no matter what, people are going into that transfer station and they're dumping stuff out. It's hard enough to manage that now. People sneak in with their bulky waste. There's people going in there without their sticker, with it not having the right stickers. I mean, it's difficult to manage. Human beings are not very nice.
Yeah.
I keep seeing this over and over again, and it's just driving me crazy.
Well, I guess
it's funny.
An advantage at the
How old
transfer
are you,
station.
Heather?
not old enough, man.
Pa.
I want to be a
Day
little
over
more
35.
oblivious.
I mean, you're surprised
I am-
by this?
We gotta
No,
stop hanging
it's
out at the
just-
swap shop.
What? I hang out at the swap shop
You
too
have to
much.
stop hanging out there.
Oh, is that my problem?
Yeah, you see all this stuff.
Yeah, I know.
It's true.
Yeah.
All
No, I
right,
was just thinking,
focus, we have more to
one,
go.
yeah. So, anyways, you'll be able to lock the gate because there won't be trucks going in any days except Tuesdays. Well, you have your roll-off guys, but.
We have the roll-off.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
gotta
but
control it a little bit.
I hear your point.
Yeah, Rich, so if we said you had to cut 7,000 out of your budget, it will be more than that, but let's say that. You have a full-time's wages, ground maintenance, just on the top of page 108. Can you hire that guy later in the year? I'm not sure, is that one guy who you're...
No, that's, are you talking about the,
First line.
$78,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not one individual that is there. That's what is allocated by numerous individuals toward the park and grounds maintenance. So, so unfortunately, that person, multiple people are cutting lawns, raking leaves, pruning bushes, mulching the downtown, planting flowers, taking care of, the common areas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not one person that we can kind of delay the hiring of. It's multiple people that are coded to that line item.
Thanks.
I had one, like on page 119, this is, I'm, like you said, just going for every little bit of money I can look at. And that might be the same situation where the full-time wages have been, were like 1,000, 2024 it was 1,600, and now it's proposed to 4,300. Is that just a shift in allocation of a...
Yeah, it is, and it's really, the trusted graveyards is something that that we have many of them. We have over 80 or so trusted graveyards in town, and we try to get to those, all within a year. But in many cases, especially with the vacancies that we have right now, we have to prioritize. So you could probably see that there wasn't too much spent in 2025 budget. So, I think that if it's not spent in this line item, it means
Just get somewhere else.
Yeah, they're spent somewhere else.
Okay. And then,
While Heather's looking, I would just suggest, we should spend some time as well on the CIP budget, but Rich will be back next Monday when we're fresh, and I'd suggest we spend time then or at a subsequent work session on those.
and then on page 123, again, a super low value item, but it's printing, and we've never spent more than $900, well, $1,000, but we have it in budget for $2,600.
Let me just see.
That's
which
because-
which line item is that? 801?
27, 801, 27.
I think that's because next year, we're moving to the toter system, so there'll be more mailings to try to educate people on how it all works.
That's exactly right.
That's why we did
Yes.
that. It's the new system, and we'll have to also educate on the contracting out, but
Okay.
it's the toters, where to store them, what to put in them,
Okay.
yeah. It's a good question. Any other comments for Public Works, questions? And
I have
you
some
should-
for the capital, but we're going to save those.
Yeah, I would, yeah, because,
Okay.
yeah.
So we'll do capital at the next meeting?
Yeah, and if people have more questions about operation stuff too.
I just had one more question. So on compost, we have the cost for the Fox pickup. And then obviously they're not giving us any money back for the wonderful compost we give them, I'm sure. So from the
No.
weight diversion on the compost versus the amount of pounds it's going to be charging to tip it, are we losing money on the compost bin situation with Mr. Fox?
Oh, yes, without a doubt.
Yes.
That's not even close to break even.
How much?
Well, when you look at, the cost right now for tipping fees are about $93 a ton. And we're paying about $600 a month for, for the compost. We're not getting, what would that equal to? Somewhere around 4 ton, 5 ton? We're not getting 5 ton of compost.
10,000 pounds.
So it's like, so on the line items in there, it's $6,400. I mean, it's not a lot, but again, if we're trying to get a couple $100,000 out of this budget, you're gonna be getting it 4 to 10,000 chunks at a time. It's just the way it's gonna be.
Yeah, I think the compost is, a popular, kind of, disposal option for a lot of people that don't want to use, compost in their backyard for one reason or another, maybe vectors, things like that. So, so I think that would be missed by the community, but it is expensive.
You said that's $600 a month? Rich?
Yes. Yeah, from Mr. Fox.
$700 a year. Do we have any idea how much weight that's taking out of our waste stream?
I can get that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can get that for you. We have
Fox
estimates.
reported it out. I mean, they told us what it was a while ago, right?
We don't weigh it. What we do is we have an estimate on how full those toters are, is what we track, and we know what a full toter would weigh. So we kind of estimate how much weight we get every week, and every month.
Okay.
So, but I can get that for you. But like I said, it is a popular option for the community, and I think it would be missed if it wasn't available up there at the transfer station.
And hopefully you'll get some of the numbers from the students that are doing the current compost challenge. We've collected data in the past to get a sense of, how many pounds per household, you can anticipate weekly. It doesn't make it any less expensive to have Mr. Fox pick it up, but gives you a sense of what's possible when you only have 25 families doing it versus trying to, and encouraging it on a town-wide basis.
Sally, is the idea that people take it to the transfer station or it will be picked up?
I think she's just talking about household generation.
Just household generation, at this point. So,
This is a deciding factor.
and people right now for the challenge are either putting it in their backyard, having Mr. Fox come to their house, or bringing it to the transfer station.
But I mean, for next year,
There's not,
it's just transfer station.
it's just transfer station. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Rich.
Okay,
See you
thank you
next
all.
week.
Yeah, thank you, Rich.
See you next week.
See you again.
Take care. Thank you all.
Lisa,
Yep, we've got them online. Rainey Kelly is here with Jack Dalton and John Lavoy.
And do we not have fire first?
Police is.
Oh, police
first
then
on
fire,
this
good,
list.
okay.
Do we want to go ahead and extend the meeting to make sure we're giving them the commensurate amount of time?
See how much time it takes.
Preemptively.
Yeah, you can see how we're doing.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Good to go?
Okay. Have a question? I see sidearm replacement in the, I guess it's a CIP question, but I see it for 2027. My assumption is that your preference would be 2026. I don't know if that's true, but I'm
Yeah.
just, okay.
Yeah, we looked at this closely. The firearms that we currently carry are in good working order. They're just 5 years old. We have some really good armorers. Our firearms instructors are armorers, and they take very good care of the handgun. So pushing it out to 2027, it's not going to hurt that badly. So.
But I assume that your interest in this is in part the reputation of the 6-hour sidearms currently.
That, yeah, that was certainly a consideration. There's a lot of craziness floating out there about the weapon that we carry, the 380. But more than that, Sally, was the recommended replacement from the manufacturers is around the 5-year mark. And that's where we're at now with the current inventory of the SIG 320 pistol.
So you're comfortable with the 2027
I am.
year?
Yes.
I didn't note in the CIP that 20,000 got moved, but it didn't get added into the total for the CIP for the police department for 2027. Just a note. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Carden?
Yeah, hi, Chief.
Hi, Gardner.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Good to see you folks.
Chief, I'm wondering about this new hire, and was well supported by Mr. Lavoie, Captain Lavoie's write-up, and I checked on him, and yes, indeed, a lot of other towns have a full-time person. But I was wondering if he could start in September instead of July, saving us $8,000. We're having a really tough year with the budget. I don't know if you heard in the beginning.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it's up 18%. So we're looking for savings wherever we can. And I wasn't sure how critical it was that he start in July versus September.
I don't object to the September. Reality is that the captain and our Jen Johnson, our administrative assistant, they're going to have the work done for the next inspection of our records. It's coming down in June, so we can certainly wait until September to bring that person on board.
No, that'd be helpful, thanks. You're the first one who's agreed to anything tonight. So I congratulate you.
Thank you.
Oh, I did first.
So let me try another one. Okay, so police education and training. You're running about $22,000 this year. You had a high of $38,000 in 2024. We could save $9,000 by cutting it to $40,000, and that would still be the most we've ever spent in a year on education and training.
Right, so the reality of that is the New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council has mandated additional training hours per officer. It used to be 16 hours, now it's 24. So that is some of the thought of going with that number. And also we've got a bunch of new hires, new officers who've just gone through the police academy, but there's some trainings that they don't get there that we like to expose them to. And then you factor in the additional cost of the officer's time, overtime, reference to the contract that they negotiated, so that all comes into play.
Okay, could you just take a look at it and see, if there's anything we can do, shuffling some things around maybe into the next year? That would be great.
Absolutely, yeah.
The police fuel for vehicles, I looked online, it's pretty unanimous that gasoline prices are going to decline next year. And it looks like, the run rate is about 20,000, 22,000, 23,000 the last 3 years. And it seems like if prices are coming down, we could save $5,000 and reduce the forecast to 20,000.
I don't have a problem with that. You're kind of rolling the dice that prices are going to go down, but I take you've done some work on that and some research, so if that's what the numbers point to, then certainly we're not going to argue with it.
We dropped it last year because it forecasted lower prices.
Yeah. And we have all of our frontline cars and, even our admin cars now are all the hybrid. And they get a lot better gas mileage than the old 8-cylinder vehicles that we ran for years and years. So, and I think that's contributed also to the savings in the fuel.
Now I'm going to push you a bridge too far.
Well, so how much are we reducing that one? I didn't get.
25
I think
to 20,
$5,000.
I think you said.
Okay.
Now I'm going to push you a bridge too far. Can we remove the dog?
I just got the dog.
I knew it.
You're trying to get me in big trouble with
He's
that.
got no
citizen,
respect.
They love that dog. The kids, if you went downtown for the Halloween thing or
Yeah, no, it's very cool, Chief. I agree.
Yeah.
But it cost us nothing this year.
Yeah, well, that's because the officers volunteered everything. I mean, he took a financial burden on in order to get this program off the ground. And I gotta tell you, I was skeptical about it, but after seeing, what he's doing with that, and the kids, and not even just the kids, but everybody's loved it so far. And so I would really prefer that we don't cut that.
That would hurt my feelings too.
Well, it hurts mine just asking for it. Okay, thank you very much.
Can I ask about, it's negligible, but the cable TV, what is the purpose of that?
Come on, Chief.
Cable TV?
Yeah, under the, it's miscellaneous, so it's narrative for column 6. How does it help? Page 101, I guess, there's miscellaneous, there's the works, Breaking New Grounds, Hannaford, the water cooler, and then it says cable-ready television.
Is it Zoom?
Yeah, we get cable television in the building, but we also have a number of online trainings that I'm not sure if the cable fits into that or not, but we can try to get you a better answer than that for sure. So,
Does cable include Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious if it's cable television, if that's it's a safety concern because it keeps jailed inmates, but we don't have any jailed inmates.
No,
We have a holding cell?
We have a holding here.
We have a holding cell. I mean, is that a safety thing where like it keeps people calm to keep them distracted? If not, is this a old technology?
I don't have the answer for you, but I will get that for you.
Chief, I can speak to that if you want.
Go ahead, John.
So that is Xfinity Comcast. We get a discounted rate. It's a very nominal fee per month. It feeds 2 TVs in the police station. One is in the community room, which is used by various groups, and it is used on occasion by us in emergencies as a kind of operations room. So it does give us a feed to, I guess, the outside world for news and things like that. And then also, it does feed to a TV for our break room that employees use when they're taking their lunch or dinner break, depending on the shift that they're on.
It seemed in the original budget hearings, there was some talk about telephone lines possibly going to the police station that are unidentified, as well as to town hall. Has that process been finished, or where are we in that process?
I know Luke was
So
working
yeah,
with you on
the
it.
lines have been identified, and Luke was in the process of making the notification. I don't know if he's done that yet or not, but if he's still on, I still see Luke on. But I toss that to you.
I can just jump in there. So yes, we've identified the lines. We're ready to send our cut letter last week, and then we identified 4 new lines as of Friday. So we think we're going to see even greater cuts to that particular item.
So will that be reflected in a
Can
little
we-
bit of an alternate?
Can we capture those savings, Luke, for the budget?
I believe so,
Once
yes.
you know more. Yeah, so more to come.
Yeah, we'll have to get together, Todd, and figure out that adjustment.
Any other questions for the police? Well, thank you for being here.
Yes, good seeing you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Thanks, Gavin.
And last,
We always save the best for last.
there we go. You guys have been very patient being here all night.
You've covered a lot of ground tonight, and I feel solid that Luke Vincent is still watching.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He was able to get home. You're a good person.
All right, so we have the fire department here with our chief and assistant.
Yes, Dave Emanuel, and I'm here with Rob Atwater.
That was pretty cool, swearing in the new guy. You know, a couple weeks ago, yeah.
Thank you. It was impactful for both firefighter Shelley as well as his family.
Very cool that his father was a firefighter.
It meant a big deal. He stuck around, and we talked a fair amount afterwards.
Oh, yeah, nice. It's one of those old line guys you're looking for that you don't find so much anymore.
I would agree. We've been very fortunate with our hires, and up until, yes, most recent as well.
So we'll take the first question on page 66. It's under your, again, education, training and seminars. And we budgeted for $5,800 last year, and it doesn't look like a lot of that was spent. And in previous history, you were around $2,730 for 2023 was the highest amount. And you got it in for 58 again for this year. Is there actually scheduled and planned or quoted trainings that is behind that number, or can it be reduced?
We have been trying to consistently send staff to programs, but we're kind of in flux of changing positions again right now. So
66-foot line.
She's on 70108.
Oh, thanks.
yeah, so on the good years, when people invite, I speak across the countryside, and on the good programs, they cover all the costs, so they cover a number of the costs for us to go.
So you don't know, you might have it and you might not need it.
That is correct, and I know that the fees for some of the different classes have also increased exponentially with the online learning environment. They've really worked it out now, so there aren't $1,200 classes very frequently anymore. There's several $1,000s for classes.
I think it's also worth noting that you went without during last season or last year for training and education because of overtime exceeding what we had access to.
And that was a different line, but I agree with you. That's in the training component.
Okay.
Thank you for noting that. Yes, we in 24 we rated the fire department's training as well.
But so far this year, we've only spent $297.
Looks like the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, we can keep you understaffed and busy. It will save money on this line.
Wow.
I don't know how I feel about that one.
Can you describe where anything is shifting? Are there any openings in the fire department currently?
Where are things shifting? Well, currently, Assistant Chief Trull retired this past month. We reworked the position to become a Deputy of Safety and Risk, advertised. We have a candidate pool right now. The candidate resumes are being reviewed by our hiring assistant right now. And our plan is our next move is to rewrite the Assistant Chief position to be Operations and Training, which Rob Atwater currently does right now. Our goal was, because our number 2 position retired, was to move our third in command up to second in command and hire a third. So
you're hiring from outside of the current.
Thank you for the point of clarification.
Personnel?
We did not have any internal applications. I'm probably not supposed to say that. We had a number of applications, but how do I say that?
Okay.
It's probably going to be from outside.
Okay. Page 68. Under contingency, fire administration, we go with the department had proposed 52,000 and it's in there for 152,000. It's either a typo
And up from
Or
0
we're-
from last year, so, and every year before that.
This is contract negotiations, so it's money set aside in the event we come to a agreement with the union.
And the 100% isn't even the right number. It's like 300%.
Right.
And this would be potentially for the firefighters association as well as middle managers, because a number of those staff are in the fire department. So it's a contingency, we may not spend it.
So that's based on X amount of people at X percent estimated increase?
Yes.
All in one fat number?
When do we think we'll have those contract negotiations finalized?
My guess is it won't be until the first part of next year, the way things are going right now. So we're not close at this point in time.
There's likely a fundamental difference on both sides, which way they think wages are going,
Yes, I think that's right.
which on the management side would say they're not going up very fast anymore at all. They were for a while, except for the health insurance component. And I think the other side is probably thinking that it's like it was 3 years ago, and it's changed. And that's on 3 unions, this being
Right.
one of them,
That's right, with 3 unions. One is, again, Durham Professional Firefighters Association, the second is Durham Professional Municipal Managers Association, which is our middle managers, and the third is the AFSCME representing most of the public works employees. Here, we're capturing the funds for the Firefighters Association and 6 employees in the fire department who are under the middle manager's contract. So this is just a lump sum that we may or may not allocate for those positions. It's just so there's money to do it with. And it's all very fluid.
So the way the budget works, again, these numbers in your proposal, though, if we don't come to an agreement by the end of the year, this will be in the budget. Whether you spend it or not is a different matter, is that it?
Right.
Or do we, at the next hearing, when you find out more, we may make amendments and drop this number down significantly?
If potentially we're able to come to agreement, a tentative agreement, then potentially we would be able to come back to the council and ask for this to be reduced. Right now, we've come up with what we think is, what management feels is a reasonable number to allocate. I'm not sure the union will believe it is or not, or feel it is, so that's all under discussion right now. And because the university shares in 50% of the cost of the fire department, we segregate all of those contract items that are part of the fire department in this budget. And in the operational budget, we have another contingency line where we would have funds for those positions who are not fire, covered by the rest of the general fund. So this is just those employees at the fire department. So UNH could share in half the cost, potentially.
So page 75, the overtime wages for suppression. You know, the run rate, David, this year is 463,000. If you just extrapolate from the end of September, and we're adding 2 new guys, and the 2 new guys were supposed to save $175,000 in overtime. So this 500 seems high, the forecast for next year, budget for next year. And I was thinking maybe we could reduce it to 465, which is consistent with the run rate for this year. And you have the 2 new guys full year, so they can save a lot of overtime. So if you could take a look at that.
I am interested in looking at with you.
Great, thank you.
And can I just, and part of, one thing that will influence that is the new contract, because that'll affect wages, which will affect overtime, so.
Got it.
We did take a reduction in this area based on what you're speaking of, and when we prepared this budget, we didn't have very long with the 2 new employees on board. So we're still